Since the very first episode of Star Trek The Next Generation came out way back in September of 1987, damn, I'm old, there has been a raging debate among Trekkies. Who's the better captain, Kirk or Picard? Spoiler alert, it's Picard. And with each new entry into the series, ranging from Enterprise to Lower Decks, the question has only gotten more and more complicated, and opinions more and more heated. So today, using the power of math...
This is the power of math, people!
We're going to try and answer that question. At least among the Treknicity crew here, and our special guest host, Wes Huntington from Twin Cities Trekkies. So join us as we continue our 9th season with an excessive deep dive into who's truly the best of the best among the captains and why. This is Treknicity.
Welcome to Treknicity, Star Trek podcast, where we do the deep dive on all things Star Trek. I'm your host, Mike Raper. With me tonight are my co-hosts, Lars DeSenza and Patrick Murray. And joining us, a very, very special guest host, Wes Huntington from Twin Cities Trekkies.
Hey. Welcome.
Hey.
Welcome to the show, Wes.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Welcome to your first appearance on this show.
First official appearance. Yes, we won't talk about the unofficial first appearance.
It's like the first didn't get aired.
Well, in this episode, we're going to tackle the great debate in Star Trek. And if you're a Star Trek fan, you know what we're talking about. Who is really the best captain?
It's not about the best details?
Not at all. We're going to break down each captain. We're going to have 10 criteria from across the franchise. And we're going to do the math. And then at the end, we're going to settle this debate once and for all, at least until we get a new show. Okay, fellas.
Yeah. Oh, that failed. Okay.
It did. It really did.
Yeah, it could have been like, welcome to Wrigley Field.
Well, for this topic, we decided that as we're going to do the deep dive, we would really do a deep dive. I'm going to do this in a way that we've never seen any other podcast do it. So we picked 10 categories that each captain can be rated on. 9 of them are related to their performance in that role, and then one is more subjective. It's the X factor. Now, each one of these was scored on a scale of 1 to 10 by us. So that means, doing your math, each captain can potentially get up to 100 points each from each of us. We did this blindly, so nobody knows what anybody else's scores are except me because I added them up. Again, Tilly would be very proud. So the categories are quickly: command style, tactical brilliance, moral compass, crew management or loyalty, diplomatic skill, coolness under pressure, their legacy and their impact, exploration and curiosity, charisma and presence, and then finally, again, X factor, just your personal bias from the 4 of us. Now, one note is that the Kirk that we're rating is the Prime Universe Kirk, not the JJ Kirk. Okay.
Yes. Prime rib roast Kirk.
Prime rib roast William Shatner Kirk, not the JJ Kirk. We're not going to talk about that. No offense to Chris Pine, but that was just awful. All right, so let's go ahead and take a shot at this. Wes, we're going to let you kind of go first since you're the guest. So let's talk about that first category, command style. This was about how they make decisions. Are they authoritarian? Are they democratic? Are they more laissez-faire? Let's hope not. Like Picard tends to be very diplomatic and democratic. He's always asking for opinion. Kirk tends to be very instinctive and is a little more bold. So what did you come up with on that one for us, Wes?
Yes, so I don't think that any of the captains do one extreme or the other. because I think the captains themselves, all of them, except for maybe Carol Freeman of Lower Decks, have a tendency to maybe like they make a decision, like some like they're like you said, they're like Kirk tends to be bold and bluffs his way out of things, whereas Picard is diplomatic. He'll like diplomat first and foremost. He'll get people together in a room. He won't necessarily negotiate. He'll that's Riker's job. Definitely um have there's no one particular captain does one or the extreme or something like that. Archer definitely thinks on his feet most of the time because he is the first captain in Starfleet history to go beyond where any human had gone previously gone before. So I think definitely Archer is the maverick. Definitely thinks on his feet, and he doesn't really ask for his opinions except for maybe Paul and Kirk's opinions. But that's it. But definitely the rest of the captains, except for Freeman, tend to they do one episode they're Democrat, the other one they're authoritarian, or laissez-faire, or it's just amalgam of all three. It's not necessarily one is always one way and one is the other way all the time.
Gotcha. Good insight. Lars, what did you think about this?
Well, the command style of every captain, of course, is going to be different. The thing that we have to consider most isn't so much about a dramatic or flair for their how they command specifically. I think it's more that they try to inspire their crew while getting the job done at the same time. The old adage goes that it's not a good boss that it leads to success; it's a good leader. Um, and I feel that, as as Wes had said before, it there are differing styles, but some of them are a little more brash. I think that Archer was pretty brash when it came to his leadership style. But then you have on the other end of the spectrum, you have Picard, who is less of the hero and more of let's go ahead and be that natural born leader. And you know, it goes from one end of the spectrum to the other. They're all on the litter, or sorry, peppered through there. Um, Freeman has a more casual approach to it, almost like she's lacking in that confidence to be a really good leader. Um, but as far as the others go, Sisko and Janeway, you're pretty much, and even Kirk, you're pretty much dealing with varying levels of either pure confidence or bravado.
Mhm. That's fair. Patrick, what do you think?
I'm going to start with clarification that even the worst we rank on most of these, especially here, it's we're already starting at a very high bar. Even the schlubbiest of captains, Archer, has a certain amount of competence in what they do. Obviously, big ones like Kirk, Picard, Sisko, who rated highly for me, these were ones who were consistent in their commanding abilities and generally successful and not making mistakes or choosing not logical choices. Um, Freeman obviously suffers from being a side character in on her own ship,
Hmm.
which is going to hurt her in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Except for ethics, that's cartoonishly high. But oh well. The I actually think she's probably the most underrated captain on this list in a lot of ways. But yeah, it comes down to how effective are you commanding your crew versus your crew being able to work around the fact that you're in command. I am surprised Captain Janeway didn't start throwing people out airlocks. Oh well.
Yeah. Actually, that's actually I believe in that one. I'm with you. I do
Okay.
like her command style. It's insofar as that she's pretty definitive. She's not
Definitively homicidal.
well. Yeah,
Anyway,
Just a little, just a
but,
little.
yeah,
but I
but
wanted
that's
to,
where I come down on that.
yeah, I wanted to ask you, how did you feel overall, specifically with Burnham and her command style?
Burnham, she manages. I don't honestly don't see it, but once she gets settled in, she seems to be competent. I mean, she saves the galaxy every season, so
Yeah, that's
except
just
she's
right. Would you say she falls more into the um, good leader or good boss? Because I don't think that she was necessarily bad.
yeah,
She was one of the two lowest on
yeah.
my particular list, but I still feel that perhaps as a manager or a boss, that she did an acceptable job. I don't
Oh
think
yeah,
she's a good leader because I don't think she really inspired the crew around her.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I could see that. She actually landed midway. It was Janeway and her inconsistency was actually worse on my list, but not by much. So
Okay.
Yeah. Well, when I look at this list, I have to, I was taking into account, being ex-military myself, I'm thinking about how their situations are all different and how that has to impact their command style. So, you've got Picard, you've got Kirk, you've got Pike, you've got Freeman, you've got Janeway. They're all relatively, we don't know how much experience some of them have, but with some of them, they've been in the job for a long time and they've had the actual official training, right? There's a command school. All of these guys went to it, right? So they've been taught how to do this. So you kind of have to hold them to a little bit of a higher bar. Archer is just like, oh, go make up the rules as you go. And he's got the smallest crew, certainly got the most fragile ship, and is having to kind of like figure this out as he goes. Burnham suffers for me because she did not follow the traditional track of going to command school and working her way up. Picard, by the time he takes over the Enterprise in the first part of TNG, he's been a captain for over 20 years. She didn't get any of that. It's just, oh, you're captain now. Oh, okay. You know, but overall, I score the more seasoned captains with the higher score. Sisko, Picard, Kirk, they all score really high. Archer's high middle, Pike is high middle. Janeway gets dinged a little bit because she does. Uh, she takes the authoritarian thing a little too far sometimes, and they all have to. I mean, to a point. When I think authoritarian, I don't mean it in a negative way. It just means ultimately they make the decisions. All of them, to some degree, will ask for input, and then they make the choice. And once the choice is made, that's what they do. I think Picard tends to ask for more input than any of the others. Sometimes I think to his detriment. I think Kit Sisko and Kirk are kind of in the same boat. They've got a couple of people that they really trust and listen to, and then they go and make their choice. So, but all of them score, pretty good because you can't. I don't think you can be a captain and not score reasonably well on this.
which is why there's my sliding scale puts everybody at a high bar to start.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
All right, let's talk about the second point. This one's probably going to little bit more variety, and that's again their tactical brilliance. We'll call it. How good are they when they're in combat situations? And by combat, I don't just mean starship combat, but ground combat. When they can they manage more than one ship well? Can they manage a fleet? Um, how good are they? How successful are they? How clever are they when they are planning and executing their plans when they're fighting somebody else? So
Especially if
Wes,
they're in a rubber Gorn suit.
a rubber Gorn suit. So Wes, again, you lead us off.
Yeah. So I thought about this when I was going through this. I think Archer kind of suffers a little bit in this one
Yeah.
because like I said, he's the pioneer. His crew are the pioneers. exploring deep space. And when Enterprise is launched, they don't have the full weaponry that they eventually have.
They're getting that on
The
Tuesday.
the phase can't. Yeah, they don't have it. Because they're pretty much doing one mission to bring the Klingon back to Kronos, Klingon Klang. So all they have are like torpedoes, and that's it for like the first like 10 episodes of season 1
Hmm.
of Enterprise. And eventually they eventually have the phase cannons and stuff like that. And then when the Zindi war, and then the Zindi arc starts, they're more outfitted as a warship. So they're still trying to be the heroes. They're trying to save Earth from this intergalactic threat. So, but they're still like Archer still thinks on his feet, kind of thing. Granted, they get into big battles towards the end of the season of season 3, but and like you said, Mike, he has the fragile ship, the most fragile ship out of all of them. So out of all of them in this list, because most of the other ones have shields. So, but yeah, definitely. And then with the ground stuff like that, Archer is generally the one who goes into generally goes on those away missions, stuff like that, to, kind of be like the what eventually like Kirk aspires to be. And speaking of Kirk, he's the one with the tactical brilliance because, in my opinion, I think granted I scored him a little high on that list. I think, no, actually I did. Yeah, I got him. I didn't, but almost pretty high because, not only with his bluffing, especially with the First Federation, trying to bluff him out of the situation, without firing or something like that, but definitely with fighting Khan in the Wrath of Khan. With the three-dimensional moving the Enterprise through the Nutar Nebula and stuff like that. And then
That's fair. Yeah. Lars, what'd you think?
So to kind of build on what Wes was saying, I put Archer. Actually, Archer and Pike were dead even on this, and the reason I had that is because I felt like they should be able to do better with what they have. And I say that because I'm talking about, as Wes said, in the first part of the first season of Enterprise, the NX class was only equipped with the torpedoes, the physical torpedoes, and the grappler hook. The Enterprise itself, the Connie class Enterprise, is of course kind of loaded for bear as far as a Starfleet ship goes. In fact, in some iterations, it's referred to as a dreadnought. They should be able to do better with either having little and be a better technician, or be able to utilize and deploy the weaponry and systems they have. Now, if you wanted to like really, really dig deep on it, we talked about things like with Archer, especially in Broken Bow, he gets his ass kind of handed to him by the Suliban,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where he has to be evac'd from the planet, from the Rigel station. With Pike, again, he doesn't. When we look at how he handles a difficult situation, especially where a loss of life could be involved, we look at him in Quality of Mercy. His reluctance to use what is at hand effectively changes the future and not for the better.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as they go, they were right about the middle ground for me. Burnham, I gave the least amount because she just doesn't have the experience. She is not a good tactician. She has the inability to be one, at least at the start. As the series goes on, she gets better at it. but I don't think that they really truly tap into a captain's potential to show her as an actual brilliant tactician as any starship captain should be. They should be at least competent, and I really felt like she fell flat. Of course, I am biased towards Picard, and a lot of that comes from not just how he handles combat or tactical situations aboard the Galaxy class, but also he's known for the Picard maneuver, which is a legendary tactical movement that we saw when he was commander of the Stargazer. So, of course, for me, I felt like he has consistently shown high ability to use strategy and tactics at almost any turn. The only time I think I would give him any kind of negative kind of scoring on that is perhaps in the episode where he gets captured by the Cardassians. I mean, that was kind of a rookie mistake, but at the end of the day, I can't judge him solely on that. As far as Kirk and Sisko and Janeway, in their respective fields and in their respective situations, I think they all performed pretty high. And then Freeman, still kind of middle of the road. I think the way she handled combat situations was marginally better than the way, say, Archer or Pike would do it, but that is bolstered largely because she has her daughter who is a free thinker and can actually come to the situation with a better head on her shoulders. We see that in the episode where they are doing combat against the Laredo, and Mariner calls in all the Cali classes.
Okay. Patrick, what do you think?
Well, to pick up where we were left off with Freeman, yeah, she's lucky that the Cali class is a tough ship. She's definitely not the best with tactics. She can pull it off, and she relies on her crew significantly. High scores for me, Sisko and Janeway for obvious reasons. One was a Dominion war hero. The other one survived the Delta Quadrant. They actually beat out Kirk, who is obviously, you compare Balance of Terror versus Quality of Mercy, we get to see Pike versus Kirk. You know who the better tactician is there. Picard actually got dinged because whenever he went up against Riker generally won somehow. So, yeah, Archer kind of middle of the road because he kind of had to learn on the job. He lacked the training, but managed anyway. And, well, let's put it this way. When you subtract all the advantages that being a Mary Sue gives you, yeah, Burnham hit the tank. Because it really comes to it comes down to how well do you win, and how often do you win your fights, and how well do you do getting out of them when you lose. And, yeah, it's, again, Mary Sue has the advantage of not ever losing.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Very true.
I want to say the comment about Archer specifically. For me, the only thing that gave him the level that I gave him, I would have actually scored him lower, given the fact that he was really not making use of what abilities he should have. He did as well as he did, I think, largely because he had Malcolm Reed. Malcolm Reed was paranoid in a good way. He was always looking around the corner for what the next threat was. I mean, as far as canon goes, he is technically the person who brought in the first version of what we've known. I think he called it Tactical Alert.
Tactical Alert, yeah.
And to be fair, that is the other part is, Archer did pretty much handpick his crew, whereas everybody else kind of got their crew and maybe had a couple choices.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that was probably where Archer was most brilliant, is he picked people that filled in his blanks.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that's fair.
Yep. Mike?
Yeah. I mean, I'll pick up with that. And that's actually when we get to crew management, Archer actually scores pretty high for me for that reason. right? Because he did pick his crew and he knew them and he managed them well. But on this issue of tactical, Archer, he's kind of middle of the road for me because he starts off so poorly. Toward the end, he does much better. If you watch the later episodes, uh, in season 3 with the Xindi and in season 4, he's actually quite good at it. But he's been forced to learn it on the job. In the beginning, he's terrible, and it's okay because he was never taught this. He's an explorer. He wants to go out and explore and be the Boy Scout, and he's suddenly thrown into these situations he is not prepared or trained for. So he gets dinged for that. Pike is okay. I think we need to see more of him in these roles where he really gets hurt. He's too idealistic, and we see that in Equality of Mercy. He is trying so hard to talk with the Romulans, and Kirk is like, "You blinked, you know, you need to take them out. That's what we need to do." And so he gets dinged a little bit like that. We'll see after the next few seasons how he scores, but for right now, he's middle high. The two that score the highest from me is Kirk and Sisko. Sisko, for obvious reasons, the man is by far the best tactician of any of these guys. He can manage one ship, he can manage a fleet, he can manage ground units, he can manage himself, and he's known for this. And the episode Valiant, where Jake is trying to talk the insane cadets from attacking a Dominion battleship, he's like, you know who my dad is, and he's the best, and he would not do this. So he's got that reputation, and I think he's earned it. Kirk is known for this. This is his shtick, right? He's the tactics guy, whether it's Balance of Terror, where he takes on the Romulans and he wins that, or figures out how to blow up the Doomsday Machine, or figures out how to beat multiple Klingons whenever that comes around. Even when the third film, he tricks them into taking his ship. Well, he takes theirs. He's really good at this. I mean, he's really good at it. But I don't think, and this is a distinction, I don't know that Kirk is much of a strategist. As a tactician, he's very good. He handles things in the moment. I'm not sure how well he would do if he tried to command a fleet the way Sisko did. I don't know that he would be as good at it.
That's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
Well, it's because strategy and tactics are two different things, and I don't know that Kirk is much of a. We don't see him have the opportunity to really be a strategist, but he is an excellent tactician. That much is I don't think there's any doubt. Picard's good. Picard suffers a little bit for me, not much. He's still really high from some of the same stuff that Pike does. He sometimes is a little too slow to act because he's looking for diplomacy sometimes too much. I actually saw this one a couple of days ago. The episode where they get their minds wiped by Commander Macduff, who wants to trick them into attacking the poor, pathetic little Lysians. And watching that one, it's like, okay, the ship has just showed up out of nowhere. Oh, that's interesting. What is it? Never seen one like it before. Oh, it's probing us. Should we put our shields up? Nah, it'll be fine. Oh, now it's probing our computer system. Should we put our shields up? And he literally goes, shields up. Too late at that point, right? They've been hit by it. And because of that indecision, they were that close to wiping out that command center and killing all 15,000 people on it. He's just a little slow to act. Now, when he does, I think to your point, Lars, he's very good when he does start to act. I just think his initiative is a little off. Janeway's really good, but she's just kind of like, she has to be, right? It's like, you want to get home? You need to be aggressive, you need to be ruthless, and you need to think on your feet.
Little genocide. Yeah.
Would she be that good if she was at home? Like if she was thrown into Dominion Wars, just another captain, would she be that good? Honestly, don't know. Would she be that good because she does not have her Maquis crew, who were all very good at this tactical stuff? Again, don't know.
I wanted to make one last comment, and it was about Kirk. You talked about he's a brilliant tactician, but he's not a good strategist. And I think we had a really good example of that during Wrath of Khan, when he thought to use the command codes, basically using Khan's lack of knowledge against him. Now, I don't think that was a strategy. I think that was more of a tactic that was, hey, I'm in the moment. I'm not planning this. I just have, like, I'm reaching into my hat and I'm pulling out whatever trick I can pull out. and it just happens to be the one that he remembers is like, oh yeah, by the way, this guy has never commanded a starship before in 3-dimensional space. So I mean, and we could probably talk forever about the all of the ins and outs of the Battle of the Mutara Nebula, but again, that's a perfect example or representation of him being able to fly by the seat of his pants and do so brilliantly, but not necessarily plan an operation.
Yeah, he's at his tactical best in that after he gets his head out of his ass. Once he has to react to actually being attacked, and he's in the extended version they showed on television. He even said the only reason we're still alive is I knew something about these ships that he didn't. But his plan, his entire plan of we're going to lie and make him think the ship is more damaged than it is, so we have time to make repairs. We're going to hide in a nebula because it puts us on equal footing, and I have a better person on science and scanners who's going to be able to find their ship where they're not probably going to be able to find mine. Those were all like very clever tactical moves. So yeah, I agree with that. All right, I think we've beat that horse to death. Let's go on to the next one. This is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. Moral compass. All right, moral compass. Specifically, do they stand by Federation and Starfleet ideals, especially under pressure? Do they bend rules? Do they break rules? And if they do, was it a situation where it was justified? Archer struggles with ethics quite a bit in his early space exploration, and God knows Sisko has got a lot of frustration he's dealing with in the Dominion War, and we won't even talk about Janeway.
Yes, we will.
Yes, I'm sure Patrick will talk about Janeway. So yeah, so Wes, take it away.
So yeah, so all of them do have kind of like a moral compass to an extent. Especially the ones that came after Archer, because Archer is the only one out of this list where there's no prime directive. So, but you're right, Mike. He does have a bunch of ethical dilemmas that he deals with, especially during there's one great episode from the first season, Dear Doctor, for example. Trying to make a decision whether or not to save this species and stuff like that, and he decides not to because because of that. But then you get into the later years with dealing with Archer, definitely with the Xindi arc. We got there are billions of people counting on the NX-01 to save them from the Xindi, save Earth from the Xindi, and he resorts to tactics that are ethical dilemmas that have to ensure the safety of not only his crew but also the people of Earth. So he has to rely on torture to get information, or to grow a 15-day-old symbiote, and to save Trip Tucker, or to strand a group of aliens by stealing their warp coil, then they'd be stranded away from home for 3 years. And stuff like that. And then the rest of them, Pike, Sisko, Janeway, and Picard and Freeman have all taken that oath to be Starfleet officers and uphold the principles and ideals of the Federation, which includes the Prime Directive. And Kirk bends it. Definitely, Picard tells. I remember this one scene from was it A Matter of Time with Matt Frewer.
Yes.
He says he said, nevertheless, I disregarded that directive on more than one occasion because I thought it was the right thing to do. And he tells him that, and Picard has bent it, and Janeway definitely bent it. Tuvix. But yeah, exactly. Or but she tells Captain Ransom in Equinox that when you have a conversation about having violated the Prime Directive while they've been in the Delta Quadrant, she goes like, broken it? No, but bent it. So she says something to that effect. And then Sisko definitely with tricking the Romulans into getting into the Dominion War and stuff like that definitely is a moral dilemma. Having to rely on a criminal and a known saboteur and spy to trick a major power to join the Federation and Klingons to defeat the Dominion. So Yeah, so definitely like that. And necessarily Burnham and Freeman don't really have those kind of moral dilemmas. Not as much. If it's there, it's very subtle.
Yeah, I think everybody probably agrees on that. Yeah. Okay. How about you, Lars?
So yeah, I really want to dig a little bit or go into a little more detail, but I do want to pick up where Wes left off and talk about. The reason why he got the highest score amongst all of them wasn't because I felt like he always made the right choice. I mean, if we were judging these captains on, say, one particular instance where they had to make a morally ambiguous decision, I'm pretty sure that all of them, save for Archer, would probably be sub 5, maybe even sub 3, because they've all done things that are morally ambiguous. Now, I give Archer and Pike and Freeman sort of the mid to high rankings because I feel like despite whatever situation they're in, they always went for the moral high ground, regardless of whether it was the right thing to do, whether they were following orders, or whether they were doing anything that could be viewed as ambiguous. Janeway, I mean,
War criminal.
yeah, like Burnham, Janeway, and Kirk all fared about the same for me. I think Kirk and Janeway scored 1 point higher than Burnham. The reason why I went with Burnham just at that level is because despite whatever the moral imperative was for a situation, she seemed like it didn't matter really, like the ends justified the means. She would consider the morality of the situation, but ultimately, if they've got to blow a hole wide open in the universe to make something happen, to do whatever, yeah, let's do it.
That's where Harry learned it.
I guess so. The thing is that Janeway was, I mean, like Janeway and Kirk were, for me, probably two of the most morally ambiguous captains on this list. Not that they necessarily did the bad things just for doing bad things. It was more the fact that they chose the ends over the means. Sometimes it was good and it worked out, and sometimes
Tuvix.
yeah. Tuvix was a wonderful example. Thank you, Wes. The thing with Picard is, as you were saying, he said it's, he's talking about, well, I've had to break regulations on a number of occasions. Breaking the law or breaking the rules, to me, exactly, doesn't necessarily mean that they are morally ambiguous. It means that they chose the higher ground. Go ahead. I know you're waiting to say it, Patrick. Don't do it. They have the high ground. All right, I did it for you.
I was going to let you have that one.
Yeah.
Flail. Flail.
Exactly. The thing is that regardless of what the rules were in the situation, he always took the highest ground that he could. For me, that is the absolute paramount job of a starship captain, is doing the right thing.
Yeah. All right, that's fair. Patrick, do you have a
Janeway
few
was a
comments?
Janeway was a genocidal bitch. To be fair, she had to get back from the Delta Quadrant with her crew somehow. She got him home, and all that stuff happened to the Delta Quadrant. So let's make her an admiral,
Yeah.
because that's where all the criminal, because that's where all the ethically free people end up anyway. It's true. Literally, as in every other episode involving a Starfleet admiral, the Starfleet admiral turns out to be the bad guy.
Absolutely.
But yeah, let me look at my list. Yeah, Burnham kind of rates a little low. Not the 2 that Janeway got. Yeah, obviously Kirk did better than average. Not as good as Pike, because Kirk could do his halting Shatner style moralizing speeches, but yeah, then the sexual predator comes out. Well, hey, there's a chick. Let's see here. Sisko, pretty solid. Obviously, willing to compromise when needs to. I mean, I'm surprised it took him so long to unleash Garrick. Freeman, if we could have ranked her as 11, I would have, because she goes out of her way to be overly ethical. It's horrible. Yeah, Pike, really good. Somehow he didn't shoot that one chick when they found out about the kid torture on that one planet. But oh well. And Picard, obviously a 10. Drumhead.
Yeah.
You know, I gotta give you that there. I really can't. I can't argue with that.
Drumhead. Okay.
And I would go another one with him if we're picking up on Picard. His to me the line that really defines him the most is in one of the very early first season episodes. I don't remember the name. It's the one where they have the planet with the beautiful people, and Wesley falls in some flowers, and they're going to kill him.
Oh yeah.
And Picard's line,
half the fan base cheered.
Yes,
Wesley might get to die.
Yes, killed by the beautiful people, the scantily clad beautiful people. He said, and this really stuck with me, and it's something I relate. He says, "Laws can't be just if they're absolute." And he was ready to break the rules to get Wesley out of that, because he perceived that this is not fair. It's not a question of it being the prime directive. What you're doing is not right.
Justice is your episode, by the way.
Justice, okay. It was not a favorite. It was one of, first season.
Yeah.
That's a different story, but
except for the view.
So I'm thinking about that, and I'm curious what you guys think about this. We've talked about Kirk, and to a lesser extent Picard, Archer, Pike. They will break the rules. What I kind of always found interesting with Kirk, as I started to really think about this, here we are with our deep dive stuff. I do not remember a time when Kirk would break rules for personal gain or even for his ship. It was always to help whoever it was he was working. The story was about. The episode that really comes to mind is the one where the two planets they have a war with the computers. And
it's Armageddon.
He destroys their computer, says, now you have a real war. Or you could pick the damn phone up and talk.
That's a great episode.
It is. He didn't do that for his ship. He didn't do that to save his crew or even himself. He did it to force them to see what they were doing was just stupid, and they needed to put a stop to it. And he does that several times throughout the series. So none of them, except Janeway, are doing these things for their own ship to save their own hides. They're doing it because this is for the good of whoever it is they're working with at the time. Picard takes this to an extent that's just unreal, and he's the only one that scored a 10 on this with me. There's the episode where the proto-Vulcans think he's a god. For him to prove to them that he's not, to get them back on track, he lets them shoot him with a bow and arrow. He is prepared to die for that. And there's more than once that Picard talks about, hey, if We'll blow the ship up. We'll destroy the ship before we'll break the rules. So I think Picard is definitely the gold standard. Now, Sisko mostly is, but that business with the Dominion, he was willing to bring the Romulans into a war that could kill millions, if not billions, of their people because he didn't want to lose. Was he right to do that? Don't know. Would they have come in on their own later? Don't know. But he definitely broke the rules. And at the end, he's got that famous little speech. It's, I can live with it. I don't care. I did what I had to do. Archer definitely goes through some very morally gray areas in this indie episodes. I mean, Wes, you touched on some of these where he grows a clone and murders it because he needs to save Trip, because he needs Trip in his role as engineer to get the job done. Steals a warp core from the people who had traded with him and was on good terms with him because he has to have it, and he strands them 3 years from home, and he doesn't. I mean, he does it. He doesn't like it. It's a great moment for his character when he goes to Phlox before this, and he's like, "Have you ever had to do anything you really didn't want to do, but you felt like you had to?" And Phlox understands it. He's like, "Yeah," and he says, you need to be ready. We may have casualties. He says, "Okay, I'll be ready." So even Phlox is like, "I get it," and he's super moral. But there's definitely some gray areas, I think, for them. Freeman is, to Patrick's point, I think she's very moral, but we never really see her because she's such a side character on her own ship. We don't really get to see her deal with these kind of dilemmas on her own.
Yeah.
Comically, we see it, but
yeah. But so yeah, that was kind of my thoughts on this. And Picard absolutely is the highest scoring, and then it kind of slides down from there with Kirk and Sisko and Pike being around the same, and then just kind of goes down from there.
Janeway.
I wanted to.
Janeway scored poorly.
I wanted to put out there. I just put a question to you guys. Most of my, well, actually, all of my rankings for all of these captains have been all based on what we've seen in the series. But one thing that just kind of popped in my head a little bit ago while I was listening to you guys is, what do you think about how Picard handled the situation in First Contact when it came to the Borg trying to effectively wipe out humanity? Remember the scene in his ready room when Lily comes in to basically give him shit about not blowing up the ship and about not abandoning the ship, and he was basically being Captain Ahab going after his whale. How did you guys feel that he handled the morality of that particular situation?
I think he handled it kind of personally, Lars. I think he handled it a little poorly because he was mainly acting on his own feelings of being violated by the Borg. I think personally, I think he was acting on his own feelings rather than his own morals. I think he was more after revenge for what they did to him in the Best of Both Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he handled that situation pretty poorly because I really think he did, and that's my personal opinion of that situation. But then he made up for it in the next movie. With I know people would probably say Insurrection is kind of a bad Star Trek movie, but I think it's a great Star Trek movie because he in that particular instance, he's trying to save a population of 600 people from being exploited. So I think he made up for it in Insurrection by standing up for what he believed was the.
Yeah. If I were to jump in on that, I think that was more of a casualty of them needing action Picard. Obviously, when it brought to his end, when he realized I have to stop the Borg to save the ship, we have to stop the Borg to save the ship to fix everything. He was locked in. They needed him to be action Picard, so they had to give him a moral dilemma to deal with, and he resolves it in the end by after breaking his ships and getting the Moby Dick speech. He then of course switches back to I'm the most ethical one. Drumhead. and then orders the thing, and then goes down to save data so that we can have our cool action card time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
that's a poor slotted.
I agree. I agree with what Wes said. I think it just happened. I think his redemption came sooner. Like Patrick said, it came almost immediately when Lily called out his BS. She's like, Captain Ahab's got to go hunt his whale, and then he basically quotes from Moby Dick, and then of course we have the laughable moment when she says, "I never read it," and
Drumhead.
I think that was the point where, in that instance, he recovered. I think he redeemed himself on that one. But again, I mean, everybody talks about Insurrection being a bad Star Trek movie. I actually agree. It's a bad Star Trek movie. It happens to be a really good Star Trek episode, though.
That's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's
It's
all
like-
I'll say about that.
It's
'cause
still better than Nemesis.
Yeah, it's like a good two-parter they put
Agreed.
in the theater. Yeah.
the J.J. Abrams movie that doesn't
Oh,
exist
Yeah, no, we won't
is
talk
better than Nemesis. All right, so
No,
about
it doesn't exist.
the hypothetical movie that doesn't exist.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's get on to the next one. This is an interesting one, or was for me to think about, was crew management, loyalty. How do they manage their crew? Are they respected by their crew? Does their crew trust them? How do they handle interpersonal issues in their command? Like how Janeway initially did, I thought, a good job of uniting her Starfleet staff with the Maquis, then kind of bringing them together into one crew. Sisko, I think, has a good job early on, especially where he has to bring together the Bajorans, the Federation, Quark, Odo, all these different, different people with different agendas, and bring them together to work as a crew. So, how do you think they handle those, or how do you think they did with that? Wes, again, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I was looking through my scores, and I scored 4 of the captains pretty high. Actually, the top 10 points each. At least the top 1 out of 10 here. The top four of them was because they get the respect of their respective crews. Definitely. You know, I think they all work together pretty well. I don't think Janeway did it very well in terms of crew management because, and I have to say, this is probably due to network interference, mainly studio interference for this because they meshed them together too quickly. Um,
Yeah,
the-
yeah,
I think that's either the writers or studio interference. You got to get them together and get them together fast. Because I think Voyager suffers a little bit from its premise in terms of that because of interpersonal conflict between the various crew members because of the Maquis and Starfleet together like that. Because they need more. They need more. I think they were forced together.
Yeah,
It was
we
forced
needed
together too
more
quickly, and I think that's.
Maquis.
I love Voyager, but that's one of its weaknesses. I think it suffers from its premise of trying to have 2 very distinct crews interacting with each other on a single starship. It was just forced upon them too quickly. So I think Janeway scored a little bit too low on that, and it's nothing personal about any of the actors or anything like that. It's just the way I think it was the studio interference. I think it was a lot of other behind the scenes stuff that forced them to get forced together too quickly. So and stuff like that. But definitely people like Archer and because Archer picked his crew. Mike mentioned it himself. He said Archer picks his crew. But definitely because that's why he scores really high. Is he has picked his crew of 83 people, and will be going off, and and stuff like that. And then definitely Pike. Definitely, I think there's a certain camaraderie with all the commands, especially runs his crew, like especially with Una and Spock, and definitely Erico Ortega's. Definitely, I think there's some interaction there, and I mean stuff like that. And definitely with the other ones I scored pretty high, which were with Kirk and Picard. Definitely, the way it's just it comes together, especially with Kirk and his crew. It's not necessarily meshed well in the television series, but definitely in the 6 films. So with that, especially once I think the crew meshing together really comes together after the death of Spock and his resurrection. So in resurrection and the search for Spock. So I think that really comes together as stuff like that. And I always think of Kirk as like the father of his crew, kind of thing. He's like the big daddy of his crew. So and stuff like that. That's yeah. Maybe a little bit of the space. What you say, Patrick? You said he was like the space predator, the space predator. Yeah, so space predator.
Yeah,
So
pretty
I
much.
think the big daddy. Yeah, so
Where the
stuff like
ethics
that.
fall
That's what you
short,
said.
but it was the 60s.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, it's the '60s. Yeah, it's a little different. Free loving, man. He's loving rock and roll. So yeah, but definitely. And then with the other ones, especially Burnham. Burnham. If Star Trek Discovery had started this year, for example, and she was in this list, or like in the last couple of years, her number would have been really low because of the way she starts out as, being Starfleet's first mutineer, convicted mutineer. The crew of Discovery doesn't really trust her, especially Saru initially, and then eventually she becomes a well-respected.
It's pretty much everybody was mid to high on this because one of the things that a good captain has to do is manage their crew. They have to leverage their individual abilities as well as make them a cohesive unit. So I don't think I'm going to have too much. Pike and Picard scored the highest because I feel that they leveraged their respective crews the best. Now, don't get me wrong. Okay. I had Archer and I had Kirk and I had Sisko all like nipping on their heels because they did such a good job of having to tilt or pivot in their individual situations to utilize and leverage their respective crews in the best way possible. Janeway, I feel, just lost a step, and Burnham, again, not really playing to the strengths of her individual crew. They played to each other's individual strengths, okay? But I don't think she did such a hot job. Only worse than that is Freeman. And for me, she was the lowest on my list because no matter how moral she is or how good she is at tactics or even what her command style is, I still feel that she did a piss poor job of actually managing her crew. Her lower deckers, now I understand this was designed because it was a comedy, but ultimately they did play in seriousness in some situations, and in the instances where they did, I still feel like she was pretty bad.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Patrick, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm going to actually argue a little bit on Freeman's behalf. Yeah, I still haven't forgiven her for the bullshit with Mariner and Starbase 80, but by the time she gets to the end of the series, we see how good she is, that she still holds this crew together. Yeah, she's handicapped by it being the Lower Decks show. So
What about the fact that when the episode where they all go off to the resort and she loses her shit.
Yeah, that's cool under pressure is where I call her on that one. I gave one on this list.
Okay.
Guess where that's coming?
No.
Yeah, but yeah, once she somehow still manages to have a solid loyal crew, it just gets a little iffy here and there. Let's see here. Obviously, my top is Sisko for some reason. Between the angry shapeshifter, the terrorist first officer, a chick who knew him when he was a little kid, and she was a old horny guy, a Ferengi, and a gay spy / assassin / tailor, and he managed to hold that station together through all that political crap, and had to deal with Kai Wynn, and yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, he's high on loyalty. Kirk's solid. I mean, Picard's solid there. I think outside of his core group, Kirk's pretty much at your crewman. Let's take you down and get you killed.
Yeah.
My bottom is Burnham, of course, because once you subtract the plot force necessity for her to be captain and all the Mary sewage, yeah, she's pretty rough. She gets points for the hugs, though.
I give you credit. I give you absolute credit for Kirk on three occasions at least. Okay. Peter Preston, Ilea, and William Decker.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So yeah. Let's see. Archer did solid because he kind of picked the people, so he had auto loyalty there, but he also had no template, so he's kind of making up. And well, let's put it this way, Pike excels in this as well. I mean, if I had to decide between the two, I would say Sisko pulled off the harder task, but Pike just does it better. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like let's go and sit down and have a meal. I'll cook.
Yeah, I wanted to comment what you said about
I want that
about the old, was it the one crew member who knew him when he was younger, and he knew him as
Jadzia?
as a horny man. I was thinking, what makes you think that Jadzia is still not a horny man at that point? Come on. Just because she plays it cool doesn't mean that she's not bubbling under the surface, man. Come on. She's got all that. I mean, come on. You got to give her.
That's where snatching up Worf was the thing.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeesh.
I just want to say,
just go intimidate Worf.
Exactly. I do want to say one last comment from myself on this one.
I'll make your brains out.
Anyway. Exactly. One thing I absolutely have loved about this episode so far is that it embraces the IDIC principle right down to the wire. Okay, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. We all had the same questions. We all had the same criteria. And we all had the same opportunity to give our thoughts. And so far, I have seen like an absolute spectrum of ratings and opinions. So wonderful job so far, guys.
Okay.
All right. So when I look at this, a lot of the same points that you guys have made, right? Pike is scores highly on this because he is very good at it. I did take 1 point from him just for the fact that he's good at it because he has it easy compared to the others. You know, you look at Sisko, it's like, here, commander, not even a captain yet. You go take over this Bajoran station that's in shambles, you know, and deal with all that crap. And he pulls it off and does it really well to the point, you know, by the end of the season, even characters like Garrick are extremely loyal to him and they trust him and respect him. You know, whether they all like him or not, or agree with him every time, no, but they all definitely trust and respect him. So he scores very highly on this. Picard scores pretty high. I did ding him a little just because early on, especially, he is respected. He's pretty good at handling interpersonal issues, but he's such a damn stick in the mud. You know, he's just such a stiff that it's like, yeah, we respect you, but nobody wants to hang out with you because you're such a stiff.
I
He
was
gets
talking
better.
like Cupid, the episode Cupid.
Oh,
He gets better, later on
Mhm.
in the show. About the fourth season, he really picks up and you start to kind of like him more. But early on, especially in the first season, it's like he's yelling at people. It's kind of this. He's
Yeah.
got the grumpy old man thing going on. Archer got a very high score, but for the exact same things you guys talked about, he got to pick his crew, a lot of them anyway, and he has one big advantage over the rest of them. His crew is tiny compared to theirs. It's easier for him to get to know his crew, so that he interacts with them personally. Where you look at Picard. Is on a ship with 1,000 people. You know damn well there are people on that ship. He has no idea who they are. Never sees them. Never talks to them. Archer knows everybody on his ship, so he kind of has that advantage and gets to score high on this. I will go the opposite end of this with Janeway. I actually scored her very high on this. I do agree with Wes what you said, that a lot of how they handled that was just piss poor writing. It was like, get them in the uniforms and let's get the story going, right? We're going to forget they were ever monkey. Just get them in the uniforms. But within the show, you have to accept that, for me, I have to accept within canon that she did pull that off. She did say, okay, we're all going to have to work together. You're back in Starfleet. Here's your uniforms. Boom. And everybody worked together just fine because she told them to. Was it bad writing? Yes. But we have to accept that within the show, she did that. So I had to give her, pretty strong points on that one. So yeah, that was kind of it. I had this one where I had several tens on this one. Yeah.
Yeah, but before we go to the next one, I wanted to make a little addendum to your comment, Mike, about Picard. I think that has to do with the way Patrick Stewart was acting in the first season too.
Oh yeah,
You know,
sure.
Like
yeah,
keeping a
yeah, and
suitcase
I think,
packed.
yeah, yeah, keeping a suitcase packed. He was scared about because he had never done anything for Hollywood before, never been in Hollywood before, never had any ambitions to be a Hollywood actor. And he was scared and stuff like that, and he always brings up that story that he had a meeting with the rest of the cast during the first season of Next Gen and say, we gotta buckle down here, we gotta be serious, because we're working here 16 hours a day, 5 days a week. And then Denise Crosby says, but Patrick, we're supposed to have fun. And then Patrick goes like, we're not here to have fun. We're supposed to. So I think it's something to do with the way he was acting in the first season too. I think it's Patrick Stewart's performance. But yeah, but you're yep. And I agree with the fact he does get better in the fourth season. I think it's because of his assimilation by the Borg, stripping him of his humanity, and then slowly, gradually get it back, and then eventually being a more soft character towards, say, kids, for example, where he's on a turbo with 3 kids. Disaster in the episode Disaster, or I love this one line he says, and it's from the very early on in the third season.
Mm-hmm. Writing the first season, you got to admit, was wow. It was really bad. But it's like the same thing I said with Janeway, right? I have to look at it as the character in the show. This is how he is as presented. And it took him a while and it makes sense, that and he
Some of the writing.
it's a cute little callback, or a nice little callback in the last episode, the series
Yeah.
finale. Where he's back and forth between old Picard, current Picard, and just brand new to the ship Picard. And he tells them, it's a lot to ask that we need to trust each other. We don't know each other, but we have to do this, and I know you're the best crew in the fleet. It's like, yeah, there you go. That's how you, that's how you talk to him. Original Picard, he would never have talked to them like that.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
the
No.
benefit of 7 years of working with the same people. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
I wanted to comment, Wes. You know, you said that he kind of sat them all down and said, "Hey, we're here to do something serious. You know, you guys need to straighten up." And Denise Crosby, but Patrick, we're here to have fun. Which one stayed on the show?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. Don't at me for this. I know that Denise Crosby willingly left because she felt like the series wasn't going to go anywhere and she would rather do something else. And
Michael Dorn was happy in the end.
she
Yeah.
shot herself in the foot with a phaser. But still, I couldn't help but comment that.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right. So let's talk about diplomatic skill. This is a big one, and to me, this is probably the one that for me, I had the biggest variety of scores. When we use the math language, my standard deviation here was probably the biggest. So we're thinking about diplomatic skill. How do they handle negotiations? How do they handle first contact? How do they handle conflict? Do they escalate it? Do they diffuse it? How good are they at convincing other people to do what they want them to do? You think about Picard when the whole Klingon arc, or Kirk when he's bluffing or dealing with aliens. How good are they at this? And again, I was all over the map. I don't know about you guys, but Wes, what do you think?
Yeah, I was all over the map regarding this. I scored a couple of them pretty low, which was Burnham and Freeman, because first of all, Burnham didn't really handle first contact all that well. First of all, being I'm thinking about certain situations that she was in during the 5 seasons of Star Trek Discovery. What was it? What was it? One of those episodes in the last season about these primitive people who were worshiping people, or something like that. And Freeman, because she was a second contact class of captain. They would always be the second people to arrive at their planet after the Enterprise had been there, or something like that, and stuff like that. But definitely, Picard scores the best on this one for me personally, because like I said before, um, he's the world class negotiator. He gets people in a room. He will get people in the room, but he not always him would be the one negotiating. That would always fall on Riker. But at least most of the time it ended up being on Riker. But there were a few times where he was really good at it. Dealing with that alien who was it Ardra from Devil's Due and stuff like that, trying to negotiate with their planet, talking about 10,000 years, Devil's gonna come back, and stuff like that. Negotiating with that trickster and stuff like that, or stuff like that. And then I put Kirk actually is pretty good at this as well with diplomatic skill. He generally, I mentioned this before, he generally bluffs his way out of things, and sticky situations that he may have unintentionally or intentionally gotten himself into. I bring up the Corporate maneuver. Contacting Baylock and say, hey, we got this Corporate aboard. If you attack us, the whatever you fire at us is going to reflect back on you and damage your ship, or something like that. Or trying to so he bluffs his way out of situations, and I think he's a pretty good bluffer. I think if ever were a situation where Kirk and Riker were in a poker room together, I think they would be very good at it. So,
So you're saying Kirk's full of shit?
Yeah,
he could be full of shit. He could be full of shit and get away with it. He bluffed his way out of very different situations. And not only that, Patrick had mentioned something about the Gorn captain early in this show, and he shows mercy where the Metrons were telling him kill him. They were anticipating that he would kill him, that Kirk would kill the Gorn captain on that planet, and he says no, I won't kill him, and they.
I want to start off my section by asking Wes a question, because it just thought of something funny when you're talking about them, about Kirk and Riker being card players. Who do you think is better? Do you think Riker is a better poker player, or is Kirk a better Fizbin player? So,
Oh, oh man, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question to ask. I think Riker's just a good poker player.
He's a good gambler, period. I think.
Yeah,
You know,
he
and
gambles a
that
lot.
But who's the better poker player?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, that is Riker, man. The thing is that the reason I ask that is because I really feel like that's a valid question. I think Riker is a very good poker. Husband was a made up BS game, and Kirk thought on his feet. It was something he used it to completely blindside and baffle those guys. I thought it was just brilliant. It was kind of silly, but I thought it was brilliant. So now going on to properly about the diplomatic ratings I have for everybody. I'm not gonna lie, very little variation on this one. One got a 10, and I think we all know who that's going to be for obvious reasons. And to be fair, I was thinking about this. I wondered if maybe I had gone with that rating for this captain, not simply because of what we saw in the series, but maybe more of what we saw in the likes of maybe even insurrection, um, when they have to attend um, they have to attend the evening with the I can't remember um, the name of the people that had just achieved warp drive, and he had to do a dance with Regent Cusar. Um, and to me, I felt like that was that was I mean that was diplomatic Barbie Picard. Um, and that was probably the single finest exhibit for me. Um, but as far as the others go, I scored two captains with a 5 because I felt like they just didn't have the opportunity to develop those skills. Those are very critical skills that are only developed at the negotiating table, so to speak. I mean, thinking metaphorically speaking, and in some cases it's in the middle of battle. Sometimes it's before that. Sometimes it's trying to negotiate with a species for a trade or something in the middle of a crisis or whatever. But I still felt like they did not have those critical skills developed, so I had to score them lower. As far as the rest of them goes, Pike, Sisko, Janeway, Freeman, I felt that they were all above average on this one. I gave them all the same score, and I don't feel like they were as good as anybody. As say Picard, but I felt like they were definitely better than Archer and Burnham on this one.
Okay, Patrick.
Well, let me start at the bottom here. Archer. Archer was pretty much trying to figure it out as he went. And not that great at it. Kirk was slightly better, but let's be honest, he ran with a combination of charisma and balls and hammy speeches. Let's see
Better
here.
balls, but all right.
Freeman pretty much got boned being a Cali class captain. I mean, there's literally she's going for once in a lifetime negotiations, and they turn her away. I mean, yeah, she seems to be able to pull it off when she needs to. So she's definitely she's definitely at least as good as Kirk is. Pike obviously really good at it. Then who do I have? Janeway definitely really good at it. Burnham actually scored up here as well because this was something she's actually good at, talking to, empathizing with people, and getting them on her side. I mean, she managed to talk down to tardigrade and then do first contact out of with the aliens out on the other side of the barrier outside of the galaxy. Picard, obviously trained negotiator. I mean, he tag teamed with Sarek, and obviously anytime you needed somebody in the mid 21st century, if you need to send diplomats, you send the D. And of course, with another 10, Sisko. I mean, he had to negotiate with Kai Wynn. Enough said.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's fair.
again, all the captains have some degree of negotiating skill except Archer, and it's depends on and they all tend to shine at times.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Yeah. Similar to that, I did ding Archer, especially early on. He's not good at it. I mean, the very first episode, he wants to punch a Vulcan in the face, right? I want to knock you on your ass.
Well, to be fair, they are Vulcans.
Yes, but there's the one where his dog, takes a wee on a special tree, and he's like, he can't understand why he's upset these people, and he's upset about it. He's just not very good at it. He does get better. I mean, I will say by the end, especially when he negotiates with Degra in the Xindi Council, he's starting to kind of find his way. But this is not what he's good at this point in his career. Later, is he good at it? Probably. Don't know. We never got to see that. But at this point, not very good. Freeman, to your extent, we don't get to see her do this because she's a secondary character on our own show, so we never really get to see her do this stuff.
Literally, one joke is, "Oh, it's a once in a lifetime with the Cardassians," and they turn her away.
Yeah. Sisko, I score it was interesting for me. I really think about him as he's not bad, but I don't see Sisko as much. He's good, but he's not as good at it as the others. So he's kind of like high middle. He was able to negotiate with Kai Wynn, but maybe not very successfully. He was able to negotiate with the prophets to help him out when he needed it, but they exacted a penance on him. He had a chance to a couple of times to negotiate with Gul Dukat and let his temper get the better of him, and it didn't work out. So he's okay, but it's not really, the big strong suit for him. Pike is good. We don't get to see him do as much of this. I do get the sense he's very good at it. We just haven't got to see him do a lot just yet.
20
Picard,
episodes.
Picard, absolutely. This is what is in his wheelhouse. He's the diplomat captain. This is what he's good at. He has talks on his ship. He gets sent out to handle negotiations. This is the thing that he is absolutely the master at. I don't think anybody would doubt that. I will say I gave Kirk a pretty high score on this, not as high as Picard, because I think his reputation suffers a little bit as the shoot 'em, we come in peace, shoot to kill, the cowboy. But if you go back and really watch, he pulls off some pretty damned impressive negotiations of his own. I think I made a little list. He negotiates with a supercomputer to kill itself. He negotiates with evil Mr. Spock to take down an evil empire on his own. He negotiates with the Horta monster so that it stops attacking the miners, and he can't even speak its language. He negotiates reasonably well with the Gorn once they stop trying to kill each other, and he makes a point of saying he's not going to kill that Gorn. He is actually pretty good at this. I just think it sometimes gets lost in the shuffle that he is able to do this stuff. I think another one, a piece of the action, right? Now, this is a planet that has been gang warfare for years, ever since the ship Horizon showed up. He's there for one day, and he manages to set it up where they have one guy who's in charge and a lieutenant. Oh, done. Just through talking to them and explaining the benefits of what they could do. So I think he's actually really good at this. It's just not something he's really remembered for. He's more remembered for the tactical stuff, the shoot 'em up,
getting
the
laid.
the sleeping with every chick that he comes across. But when you kind of push all that out and look at him, it's like, he's got some pretty impressive negotiations of his own that he does. So this one, I had the most varied scores in this one, and I think a lot of it has to do with their situations that they're in at the time that we see them in the show. So, all right. Let's talk about the next thing.
You want to take a pause, right?
Yes, if we can. So we
Okay.
can just pause the recording.
Oh, I'm just not gonna stop it. We'll just
I'm just going to cut it out.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. This Cancer Boy has to go take a wee.
Okay,
So,
bio break.
yeah, it's that's the bad thing about this kind of radiation therapy. It's like when you gotta go, you gotta go. So be right back.
Here, I just had a cup off screen.
Like one of those bottles, like a beer bottle, like in Me, Myself, and Irene.
Oh.
Well, it's
No,
well, luckily,
wasn't that? It was Dumb and Dumber.
Dumb and Dumber, yeah.
Same
well,
actor.
to be fair, I'd fit inside a beer bottle. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
Dude, I'm glad we're not recording. Oh shit, we are.
Like
okay,
you said, you were gonna edit this out.
yeah, you'll need to edit a little bit of me out here and there.
A little bit.
Hey, I managed to do the cold open of the Man Trap, and I did not make a joke about my ex.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, I allude to it. It's like, oh no, don't like quick wipe. Literally, that's the line. And then we get this as Treknicity. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually managed to do that without having to do a cut for once, except where I intentionally cut.
Right.
Oh, that's better. Ooh. So, for anybody who wants to know, if you ever have your prostate removed, normally we have, the guys, we have two little valves or sphincters that help us hold it. Get your prostate taken out, one of them's gone forever. So you have to learn to kind of hold it again. And I did. Now I'm good. I don't have any problems with that. But when I got to go, it's like, okay, time to go.
All right then. By the way, that's all been recorded.
That's okay. Public service announcement for the 4 of you listening to our show.
That's all going into the outtake reel.
Yeah, that's going into the.
Did you guys just on that note? Did you guys at all listen to or look at any part of the first episode where I tacked on my bloopers at the end? They were just bloody brilliant. I loved it. It was
I love stuff like that.
I mean, I think to be personally honest, my favorite blooper moment is Patrick's one, and it was when he was doing random bits of geek, and he was trying to say something, and he just he kept screwing up. Finally, he just loses it and just spouts out this long string of swears, and I'm like, I have to bleep every other freaking word, but it's just like listening to it. It's just every time I come across it, I giggle myself stupid.
And to be honest, I curse, and I probably actually cursed that much just for the blooper reel.
Probably. So, all right, Mike, you can pick it up where you left off. Whenever
Fuck it, let's do this shit. Fucking fuckity fuck. Okay, let's go.
We'll fix it in post.
Fucking A.
Okay, so next up is Cool Under Pressure. And again, this one for me, it was almost like there were two groups. There was the one group that's good at it and the one group that's not. So how do they handle or how do they react in a crisis? Do they panic? Do they freeze? Do they think quickly? Are they calm? Do they raise their voice and get angry? What happens to them when they're under pressure? They need committed. Yeah. So, and when I say how they handle, I mean them personally, not how they order the ship to react. Them. How do they handle things when a crisis happens? So, Wes?
All right. So, none of them scored a 10 out of 10. By the way, I can mention that right now on my list here. But I think all of them kind of it depends on the situation. I would think. In definitely, I would say Archer kind of reacts under pressure pretty okay because it's not necessarily in season 1 of Enterprise because, like I said, they launch with hardly any weapons, and and that's the way it goes for like the first 10 episodes, and eventually with everything else, and then you know with things going on blowing up around him, with Zindi, and then eventually with other conflicts he has that we see in the last 2 seasons, it's like I think he acts pretty calmly under pressure and stuff like that, and is able to think on his feet and do whatever he needs to do to save his ship and stuff like that. Um, I think I ranked him pretty high on that, and then also with Pike being calm as he is in a battle, for example, but we don't know exactly, but he kind of panics in the season 2 finale of Strange New World. He kind of panics at the end because he thinks about, okay, what am I gonna do next? Am I gonna is something gonna happen to me if I do this certain action or stuff like that? And we leave it right there. He's like in the middle of a panic situation. So he's like freaking about that. And then I mean, once again, I ranked Freeman low because she's a secondary character on her own ship, because it's all about the lower deckers, and stuff like that. But she is very calm when the situation does call for it. When the situation does call for it, she does be calm. But definitely, Janeway scored the highest on this list for me, because with the constant battle she went through, not just with the Kazon, not just with the Borg, not just with the Herosian or the Krenim or any of the other species that they were. Yeah, it was bad writing, yeah, but she did her best she could do under the circumstances that she did. Like Patrick said, Voyager has bad writing. We all know this. It suffered from its premise. Like I said before, it suffered from its premise. So, and I think it really did hurt it.
Well, to be fair, the only reason why we think it came back to the Alpha Quadrant in one piece is because it found a shortcut. Well, there's no tell. Now, I mean, of course, I know spoiler alert. The whole thing is, in the very last episode of Voyager, they do show Voyager getting home after all those years, but still, dude, like, whoo, they kind of,
war crimes.
they came in skidding by the seat of their pants on that one. So for me, in this particular category, I have to say that I must have been, I don't know, I think maybe I took some magic mushrooms or something beforehand, because when I'm looking at these numbers now, I'm like, do I really agree with these? But they're there. I mean, I chose them, and I'm starting to. I think one sign of growth since we did this, did all the paperwork for this, and did all the rating and such. I think I've seen more, and I've opened my mind more. So perhaps the ratings I give here might not be super, I guess, super accurate how I feel now. So just take that with a grain of salt before you come at me. For this one, I want to say the lowest I gave in Cool Under Pressure is Archer, and that's just because when the Zindi attacked Earth, it was just like he just bam, like they gave the Earth a bloody nose, and he went running back with his tail between his legs. There was no puffing out your chest and saying, all right, you want to throw down? You want to throw down with Earth? All right, come on. All right, we got it. No, he was like, help. I mean, I seriously, every time I think about that episode, all I can think of is Curly from Three Stooges.
You heard it here first, folks. He just compared Jonathan Archer to Curly.
That's right. I actually, in some cases, I think Curly would have been a better captain, but I said what I said.
Yeah, I heard that here first too.
Yeah. As far as
Got to put up the social media so that people can let you know.
oh no, that's only when you piss them off. No.
Oh yeah, you're in
Oh.
control. I forgot that.
That's fair.
Stupid son of a mother. Anyway,
So for this one, I did give 3 captains the same rating, and the other 3 3 of the other captains the same rating, but different ones, 2 different groups, and it was be Pike and Janeway and Freeman. I felt like it had to be as an overall. At the time I was doing this, I was trying to think of how they held their composure overall, and that's where I came with. I gave them as above average. I gave the other group one higher than that, closer to where I would normally put Picard, but Picard actually scored in the same group, and that was between Kirk, Picard, and Sisko, because I feel like there were enough instances where they were rattled enough that I didn't feel like they were as cool as they could be. However, consistently speaking, I was thinking, they did a pretty good job. They didn't do fantastic, but they did really good. So that's kind of where I went with it. I can't give you exact examples because I suck at that, but I will say, my thoughts have changed a little bit. I would probably give Sisko a little bit higher at this point now, just because given the gray areas that he had to navigate a lot, especially during the Dominion War, I feel like he held his cool a lot better than I initially gave him credit for.
That's fair. All right, Patrick, what do you think?
One quick counterpoint. Sisko did punch Q, like meets him, punches him. We all know he did, but that's not keeping your cool. But so I'm just gonna go top to bottom from my 10, from the person that got a 10 to a person got a 1.
A 1.
Yeah.
All right.
You know who's getting that one, because I mentioned her earlier. Obviously at the top, you don't murder and steal away across the quadrant while spouting Starfleet platitudes without being a stone cold mofo. That's Janeway. Picard, absolutely solid. If you want 4 words to describe how cool under pressure Picard is, there are 4 lights. Just as cool as I can't remember names. Why can't I remember his name? Pike. The thing with Pike, he has to address the end of season 2. I think that was an intentional. Let's just put it there for a freeze frame, so he's sitting there and looking panicked. I have a feeling that'll get instantly resolved the first 10 seconds of season 3, coming out in July.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's the solid. Obviously, Kirk definitely also pretty cool. He's solid there. Let's see here.
It's probably a good thing. It's probably a good thing that you were not really taking the movies into consideration here, because when in Star Trek 2, my apologies, Star Trek 3, when Krug has his men kill David, like the dude fell on.
He has his moment and composes himself. He still managed to, but yeah, he was generally solid overall. I mean, obviously he had an emotional moment, then he pulled back. Let's see here. Sisko obviously went off a few times here and there. He was still better than Archer, who was shaky. Going only 2 out of 10 was that captain who had most of her points flushed down the Mary Sewer. She's reactive, panicked a whole lot. Yeah, she was almost as bad as the captain who literally flies off the handle and at some point literally has to be committed because she's just so off, which
So
is Freeman, of course.
I want to know. I want to ask the question, and this has nothing to do with my opinions on your ratings. How long did it take you to come up with the term Mary Sewer?
Just once I came in with Mary Sewage in the prior one, then Mary Sewer naturally followed.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And I got to jump back. I forgot to give one of my points for in
Good.
diplomacy. I forgot to give a point to Anson Mount's hair, which is always part of anything involving Pike.
Right there. I was going to ask. That was one other thing that popped up in my head.
I did forget about the Anson Mount hair. So yeah, obviously Janeway is the solidest one, and Freeman is a disaster.
Okay, fair enough. I had, it's almost like two groups in this one where you've got the ones who are really good and the others who are just kind of average or maybe a little below. We'll start with the lower group. Burnham cries. That's it. Enough. She cries. It's like you cry all the damn time. It's not like she cries just once. It's constant. I'm like, no.
Or in a private moment or anything like that.
Yeah, it's like, no, absolutely not. I know the show was written for a different audience, but like, you know what? No. Freeman scores marginally higher, but not by a whole lot. Archer, same, he's in situations he's not trained for. He's with a ship that just can't handle it a lot of the time. So he doesn't stay as cool as he should. He gets better as the show goes on. But initially, he really does not react very well under pressure at all because he's not trained to. Janeway, stone cold, almost to the point where it's, are you a sociopath?
Is it any wonder I gave her like a 2 or something back in moral compass?
Yeah. Sisko scores high, but not as high as my last two. He scores high. He does have a temper, and Patrick brought up the exact same thing I wanted to. He punches Q in the face, and Q says, "You hit me." Picard never hit me. He says, "I'm not Picard," and Q says exactly what I was thinking. He says, "No, you're a lot easier to provoke," and that is true. Sisko is easy to provoke. He's easy to get angry. The one where he's trapped in the cave with Goldacott and his leg is busted. And he's up on his feet arguing, "You really want to do this? Do you really want to get into this?" I'm like, dude, you're in here with a crazy man who's shooting at people that you can't see. Don't piss him off. Don't do that. So he's a little iffy when you push him to a certain point. The two Icemen to me were Picard and Kirk. Those two will just sit there and have their ship destroyed and not break a sweat if they have to. Both of them at some point or another have been like, "Oh, well, we're going to die, but hey, it's okay. It's for a good cause." And I'm going to actually say, Kirk is in the third movie, him having a moment about his son is one thing. It's how he reacted to it. He's immediately up and like, "Okay, here's what we're going to do. They're going to beam over here. How many people are on that ship? All right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take their ship." It's without a pause. He's just on it. Second film, same thing. He's just had the shit blown out of his ship. He's a guy that he hasn't seen for 15 years is saying, "Okay, you're going to give me this and you're going to come over here and then I'm going to blow your ship away." What does he do? "Hey, can you pull up can you pull up the specifications on that ship?" Here's, so super, super just stone cold under pressure. Picard, same way. He will sit. I mean, this is something we used to joke about when we'd watch the show. He'll sit there, the ship will be just shaking, and they're getting shot at by somebody, and he's like, "Send out messages of greeting and friendship." He just, he's so calm and under any kind of crisis. He almost never panics or loses his cool.
You see,
and when he does, he's very cold about it.
You see the shot of the bridge, and they all go.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, "It's fine. Don't worry about it.
How's it going?
So,
How's it going, alien dudes?"
Yeah, why are you shooting at us? Stop that. So yeah, those two were, to me, they're like the Icemen. They just super calm, no matter what's going on. They just never lose their cool. You'll see them come close sometimes. Like in the episode that Wes referenced with Matt Fuhrer, Picard does start to get a little desperate to the point where he's like, look, could you just tell me what to do? There's just billions of lives at stake and I don't want to make a mistake. He starts to lose just a tiny bit. He starts to get a little desperate.
That's just being human. You got
exactly.
It would have been funny. It would have been funny if he grabbed him by like the by the scruff or what about by his collar or something. It's like
yeah, help me out here.
Listen, yeah, I mean, Sisko would have grabbed him and just started beating him around the room.
Probably be like, listen here, Max Headroom, stop this shit right now.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Exactly.
Like he pulled Q by his collar. Like, bring him back, Q. No.
Yeah.
Or when he walked in on Garrick and slapped his ass across the table.
Yeah, like totally. Like, I mean, he would sit there and like, listen here, either you tell me what I need to know, or I'm going to put you in the transporter pattern buffer and have it corrupt.
Yeah, exactly. I will give you the worst case of scoliosis ever. So,
my
God.
yeah,
You fix your ass so bad.
yeah, but yeah. So that was that was kind of my ratings. Again, to me, when I was looking at this one, it was almost the easiest one. I'm like, I know who my top are. Without any question, I know who the top 10, the top 2 are, and then just kind of work down from there. Okay, this next one was an interesting one to think about, and it's in some ways I don't know about you guys. This was a hard one for me because some of these characters it's hard to do this for. And what we're talking about here is legacy and impact. What did they accomplish in their command? How are they remembered? By Starfleet or by history. Sisko is a religious icon, and he's got a great strategic legacy from the Dominion War. Kirk is he's the John Paul Jones of Starfleet. Everybody knows him.
It's Kirk. He's got a 10
Exactly.
for me. I'll just say that because he's Kirk.
Yeah. So, what is their legacy and their impact? So let's go with Wes. What did you come up with?
Yeah, so I ranked at least 4 of the captains at the top of that list, and it's mainly because of what we know of them from other shows.
Mm-hmm.
They always mention Enterprise is getting a lot more love now in the new shows. That's no question now. But getting mentions of Archer and stuff like that, being the greatest explorer of the 22nd century or stuff like that. He was the one who laid the foundation for the Federation of Planets, United Federation of Planets, by getting Earth, Teller, Andoria, and Vulcan together in the same to be an alliance to form pretty much a unified force against, which was then the precursor to the Romulan Wars. Trying to help who were destabilizing the region near Babel and stuff like that, just to start a conflict, and he was trying to get them all together, and he was so excited about getting the alliance together and stuff like that. Granted, we had the Earth had to get over its own prejudices about alien life in order to make that happen. So, so definitely that had to occur. But then definitely with Pike, all we know is his legacy. We know his fate is pretty much his legacy. His fate about being on that J-class starship, getting radiation burns, and eventually only able to say yes or no with the blink of a light. So, and stuff like that. I mean, granted, that scene was very scary in Star Trek Discovery. I'm going to say that much. That fear factor was way up to 10.
Mm-hmm.
But in that scene, where he got to know his fate. And that's a very strong acted scene by Anson Mount. I'm going to say that right now. But definitely Kirk with all his encounters with the various life forms he came across and stuff like that, and the first contacts he made, and and other things he did, like saving the Earth from an alien probe that only spoke to humpback whales, stuff like that. Brokered a dialogue between the Klingons and the Federation, and stuff like that. And Picard definitely, with his legacy of being the diplomat he was, and trying to be the person that he eventually became, being captain of 2 enterprises, and
and eventually became a robot.
Eventually became a robot, yeah.
Robot
Became a
Picard.
robot. Yeah, Picard.
Who looks exactly like old man Picard.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, no difference there. But I put Sisko a little bit lower on that list because yes, he did some legacy things that he's known for, being the emissary to the prophets and the Bajoran people who view him as a god. But then also dealing with Space Karen, Kai Wynn, and dealing with Gul Dukat and and stuff like that. In the Dominion War, definitely his legacy is definitely being the combat veteran he will be. He is, with the tactical decisions he made, how to get the Romulans to join the war, that kind of thing. But then Janeway, I remember this one episode towards the end of the series. Was it called Friendship One? She talks to one of her old professors at Starfleet Command, Starfleet Academy, who says they talk about the various species that she's encountered, and he brings up a fast line. It brings up a throwaway line. He says to her, "You've made more first contacts than any Starfleet captain since James Kirk." So, and she goes like, "It helps you know a starship within 30,000 light years." So, I think her legacy definitely is the various species she encountered that were both friendly and neutral, and some of them were hostile. But definitely all the various species she encountered and the crew encountered, whether it be a one-off thing or they appeared in multiple episodes throughout the series, like the Kazon, the Borg, that kind of thing, or the Vod War or something like that. Some of those weird names that they came up.
Yeah, I'm going to be seriously disagreeing with on the Burnham one when we get to me. So
Okay.
leave it at that.
Okay, so for me, I felt like I was in Vegas again because I just looked at my numbers and I think I hit like the bar on 3 bars on the slot machine. For me, Legacy, eh, the reason why I gave Kirk, Picard, and Cisco the highest ratings was solely because when you think about Star Trek, for the most part, you think about them. And it's not a male ego thing. It's just uh, it's just what it is. I mean, that's not uh, anything away from Janeway or taking anything away from Pike or Freeman or Archer. Uh, it's just the way it is. I mean, it doesn't mean that I don't like any of them in particular. It just we're talking about these are the things that define Star Trek as a series. And when you talk to a non-Trekkie or Trekker, and almost any of them will have heard of Captain Kirk, Captain Picard, or Captain Sisko. Maybe Sisko might be a little bit of a reach, but for me, those were the 3 big ones. Archer, I felt like he had a little bit more than average on this because he did have a big hand in the forming of the Federation. I only gave him what I gave him because that didn't necessarily come about because of his accomplishments. It came about because it was cool. It was a cool story item. That was my opinion, anyways. As far as Pike goes, there's just not enough for him to have developed much of a legacy. I mean, we've only, the most we've seen of this character is in 2 seasons of Strange New Worlds. What he showed up for in season 2 of Discovery, and of course what we saw in the Cage, and then later repurposed for the Menagerie. Um, it just doesn't track for me. As far as like say Janeway and Freeman. Freeman, I scored the same as Archer. There isn't much in the way of legacy, but the fact that as far as a series go, the California class has become a much more popular class of starship, and along with that, the captain. So to me, that gave just a little bit pushed a little bit further than average. And bottom of my barrel is Freeman. No, sorry, not Freeman. Is Burnham, uh, because the accomplishments feel like they were shoehorned. Everything was so ham-fisted, and it was such a disservice to the character. She had so much more potential to do and be a capstone of Star Trek legacy, and I feel like they handed her a shit sandwich.
All right. Well, on
Yeah.
that note,
Yeah, I can.
Patrick.
Yeah, let me jump in here. I can absolutely agree that, yeah, the forced writing in Discovery is painful, but I'm going to disagree with her. But I'm going to take these in order just because their legacies grow and grow on each other and such. Archer, obviously, he ranked fairly high because he literally defines what Starfleet would become. Some of it's retconned, and yeah, Strange New Worlds does help Archer a little bit when Mariner and Boimler show up and they're fanboy and fangirling about the Enterprise crew, and the Enterprise crew is fanboying about the NX-01 Enterprise crew. So you know that fails back because that's the advantage of retconning. Pike doesn't do as well because obviously we don't have a whole lot, and a lot of that's being retconned in because these two shows have that problem. So their characters don't have the legacy of the characters throughout the franchise suffers a little bit. I do give them 1 point because Mariner and Boimler. That little, I would have given them a flat 5, but Mariner and Boimler bumped them up 1 point. So let's talk about Burnham. Yeah, once I've subtracted the points for the Mary suicidal amount of Mary suing, I love writing that. As the captain of Discovery, she saved the galaxy three times in the 31st century. Because the first 2 seasons pretty much got written out of history because they had to retcon Discovery into existence, so they had to get them out so it would work. But yeah, I mean, she basically solved the burn, which was a stupid thing. Talked with the extragalactic aliens and stopped them from hoovering the galaxy into oblivion, and then figured out the whole thing with the progenitors and saved the galaxy from bad stuff there. So she actually ranked better than Pike, not quite as good as Archer. I actually put her at a 7 out of 10.
Wow.
Kirk, 10. It's Kirk. I don't need to say anything more. Picard, as a character, he had the most screen time outside. I think he actually had the most screen time of any of the characters, period. Because 7 seasons, 4 movies. And yeah, very, very much Picard really defined a lot of what the Federation would become. Oh, I forgot it. He also had 3 seasons of Picard. Ugh, there's a lot there. But yeah, his impact was probably the solid. Obviously, just as high as him is Sisko because of between what he did with Bajor and what he did with the war. Yeah, Janeway is a lot weaker because most of her exploits are basically stuff she did in the Delta Quadrant. Her biggest thing that she's known for is returning her ship from the Delta Quadrant with a whole lot of stuff. Federation impact, not so much. Freeman, obviously, she is the top of the Cali class captains, the most famous one of the most famous ship. that comes across that the other Cali class look up to Freeman and the Cerritos. But she gets flat average because it's a Cali class. So
Okay.
that's the answer.
Well,
I mean, everything
so
I said is right.
when I answered this, I don't know about you guys. When I answered this question, I answered it kind of within universe. I wasn't thinking necessarily in our culture about these characters. I was thinking within that universe. How are they remembered? By history within the world of Star Trek. So to that end, Archer 10. You've got Will Riker recreating holodeck things of Archer and just geeking out over him because this is the guy who, he gives the speech, where they're announcing the formation of the Federation. In the Mirror episode, where Mirror Hoshi is looking at his, our Archer's records. So he was the greatest explorer of the 22nd century. So you have to retcon some of this. That because part of the problem with these, as Patrick touched on it, is the later shows. You'll miss the opportunity to be mentioned in the earlier ones, even if they were earlier in the timeline. Like there's never an example of Captain Kirk geeking out over Jonathan Archer because he didn't exist yet. But within that universe, he is the captain who brought together the Vulcans, the Tellarites, and the Andorians, and started the Federation. He has to be a 10 for me. Kirk, same thing. He's Kirk. Everybody geeks out over Captain Kirk. Benjamin Sisko. Captain Kirk, the one and only. Even Picard's like James T. Kirk. Wow. So Jadzia Dax, when she sees him and she's like, it's Jim Kirk, everybody geeks out over Kirk. And part of that is because he's the first show, everything that came after him, there was opportunities for characters to reference him. But I don't think, you have any doubt that the guy has a huge legacy within the Star Trek universe. Picard and Sisko and Janeway, slightly less. Just because for the same reason, right? You don't really get to see much about what happens to Picard after the movies. I know he has the series, but there's this big gap between the series and the end of the film. So it's kind of like, what do people think about him within this universe? It's like, it's kind of hard to tell. There's, we don't hear much about it. Sisko's kind of the same. He's set up to be remembered, as, a significant figure, but then he disappears to go play Prophet for God knows how long, and we don't know what the hell happened to him after that. Janeway, I think Patrick hit it exactly right. What she's remembered for most is you got sent to the other side of the galaxy and you brought your crew home. That's it. That's what you're remembered for. We don't know of anything else that she really did before that. Was she a respected captain? Don't know. Was she do anything really important before that? Don't know. Did she do anything after that? Don't know. We just don't know anything about her. So she scores okay, but she's not, she's not going to be a Kirk or an Archer or a Picard even. Freeman, kind of middle of the, average, maybe slightly above. Again, she suffers from being a side character in her own show. Burnham scores low for me because it's kind of the same thing I was just talking about with Janeway.
You hate Burnham.
Well, I don't like the show. You're right about that. But she does, you're exactly right. She does all this cool stuff, but it's centuries after all this other stuff happened. We don't get to see how people react to that. There's nothing after that. There's no show about Star Trek in the 33rd century where Michael Burnham is a revered icon. We have no idea how she's remembered or thought about because we don't get to see it. So it's hard to really judge that with her.
To be fair, we might see that when Starfleet Academy comes out.
Very possible. But there are also things she'll be remembered for that are not so good, like mutiny. So yeah, this was, some of these were really easy. Archer and Kirk, super easy. Some of the others, a little harder for me to rate.
Yep.
Right. Okay, this was a big one. I mean, this has got Star Trek written all over it. That's exploration, curiosity. Do they really embody the bold ego spirit? How committed are they to science and exploration? That's what Starfleet is all about, right? Science and exploration. So you got Janeway, who has never met an anomaly she didn't love.
You fly the ship into.
Yeah, Kirk, or Picard, he loves archaeology and exploring whatever. Archer, that's his whole shtick. Let's get out there and explore. Let's go have some fun. So let's talk about those. Wes.
All right. So I was just going through my list, and I kind of I think Archer definitely is the one who embodies it the best, other than like Kirk and Janeway, obviously, but with her scientific curiosity, being a scientist first and foremost. But I think Archer definitely, especially during the first two seasons of Enterprise, he is kind of like the one that he's the one that ventures to boldly go, because he's going further than any human had previously gone. So, seeing all these planets, meeting new species, and stuff like that, I think he embodies it the best, other than, Kirk and Janeway, because Kirk and Janeway, likely in my head canon, probably revere Archer for being a natural born explorer, to be curious about what's out there, and stuff like that. Kirk was the same way, like, he was a guy who was like going where he needed to go, and seeing what's going on, maybe try to fix the problem. Like like you mentioned it about the ending the computer war on a planet, and you've had a war for 500 years, and now you're having a real war. I'll pick up the phone, you bastards.
Pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, he defeats like 3 supercomputers in 2 seasons. Four, I should say, four. I forgot M5. I was thinking of Landru too, and I was thinking about yeah, M5. Telling
M5,
the
yeah.
M5, you're committing murder, and then the computer realizes that it did. So and stuff like that. Definitely he was the one who usually went on those landing parties. Seeing the new planets and stuff like that. And Janeway definitely with her scientific curiosity, stopping wherever they needed to stop and explore, because she was a scientist first and foremost. Even though
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. She always reminds me of. She reminds me of Clark Griswold from Vacation. Stop and see the world's biggest ball of string, or whatever. Just stop and see everything on the way. But just get to Wally World, Janeway. Just get home. Probably another first, right? Comparing Janeway to Clark Griswold.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be hilarious.
Who's more evil though?
I don't think there's any question there.
Oh my goodness. No, yeah. I was just thinking I could imagine, the opening titles to Voyager being the music being replaced with
Holiday Road.
Holiday Road. Yeah.
don't inspire YouTubers, Lars, to do that.
Yeah, it's coming. Somebody's going to do it now.
They can do it.
Yeah, someone's gonna do it now, thanks to you, Lars.
Probably. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Lars.
It's okay. So for exploration and curiosity, I did give 4 captains the same rating and 2 the same. Uh, I'm going to start with Archer. In fact, I'm going to go with my top 2, Archer and Picard, because I feel that no matter what the series threw at them, they still, they were still absolutely they embodied that explorer spirit. It was finding out about the unknown. I mean, Picard, one of Picard's lines from the end of Encounter at Farpoint is, "Let's see what's out there." And Archer, I mean, like the minute they come across an M-class planet, bam, we're there. Let's go there. Like, well, it's not on our planned route. Who cares? Let's go, man. Let's go.
World's biggest ball of string. We got to check it out.
We gotta go. Come on, man. We gotta go. We gotta go. We gotta go. Gotta go. Gotta go. Yeah. I mean, it's to me that just absolutely embodies that bold exploration and curiosity spirit. Now, I did give Pike, Sisko, Janeway, and Freeman the same rating, which is just a little bit more than above average, because I feel like in various situations they all were their version of consummate explorers. I feel like they didn't just walk away from something just because they were disinterested. They wanted to know. I don't think that they went above and beyond to do it, but I think that they did a good job of it. Freeman probably a little less than the rest, but still pretty close. And then of course, I know, big surprise, my lowest on this ranking was Burnham. And because I felt like, despite the fact that she had a cool catchphrase for when they went to warp, let's fly. Let's fly where? Let's fly. Let's fly across the solar system. Let's fly over there. Let's go do that. Let's just use the impulse engines and we'll just coast to the other side of the starbase. It's like what are we doing here, man? Like, seriously, what are we doing? I really didn't feel like she embodied that explorer spirit. There were some instances I felt like the character did, but I don't feel like it was enough to really pull her out of the lows on that one.
That's fair. All right, Patrick.
Yeah. I think everybody seems to dump on Burnham when she should be scoring better in this. I mean, I'm just going to point out, she's a scientist. She tends to do investigating and exploring. Again, this is more of writing and the fact that the show is, let's see how quickly we can get from point A to point B for the season. I mean, I actually ranked her above average, ranked her higher than Pike, ranked her higher than Kirk, easily ranked her higher than Sisko and Freeman. I mean, Janeway obviously got the 10 because, let's be honest, hey, there's an anomaly. Let's fly into it. That's like half the episodes prior to the Borg are Janeway flies the ship into an anomaly. They'd be home in a week and a half if she hadn't. That's how committed she is to this.
Huh?
Obviously, Archer gets high numbers because that. Picard, yeah, always, because, yeah, especially if it's archaeology. If it's 1,000 years old, hey, Picard's there. So, yeah, my big ones are Archer, Burnham on the bottom end of that high end, Picard, and Janeway. Freeman obviously gets the lowest score because she just wasn't written that way. She's more about going on. I mean, obviously, again, to be clear, every captain here has a sense of exploration. It's just it's a sliding scale. A 2 and a 1 and a 10 to 1 is this is where they're ranking. Average person is going to maybe down here, and this is the 1. So that's where I come down on that one.
Well, I think that's fair. Yeah. For me, I think we got some similarities, differences from everybody. Definitely exploration. Thinking about how committed they are to exploring. What is their within the show, kind of like how are they perceived as that. Picard and Archer top the list here. This is their thing. This is what they do. Archer especially, it's what he wants to do. I remember this indie episode before he's going to go on the little suicide run to blow up the weapon in the insectoid ship. He's telling his crew, he says, we were initially supposed to explore. I want you to get back to doing that. So, he's going to go die, and it's still what's on his mind is, we need to go explore. Picard, of course, exploring and diplomacy, that's his shtick. And even personally, he likes to do, archaeology and such. Kirk's a pretty good explorer. I think he and Burnham both scored high on this. He is not, a lot of the plot points for him are not so much written around exploring as it is monster or alien of the week. But within the show, you get little nuggets about, that they have gone out farther than any other ship. And in Janeway, so you've got more first contacts with anybody except Captain Kirk. So I think he's a pretty strong explorer based on what we know about him. We just don't get to see a lot of it. Janeway, again, to Patrick's point, never saw an anomaly she didn't like.
And fly the ship into for plot reasons.
Have to go check it out. The lowest, oddly enough, my lowest score here, and I'm sure we'd get some hate mail, is actually Sisko. And it's not that I don't Sisko as being a curious person or capable of exploration. Sisko's not an explorer. Sisko is a builder. Whether he's building a solar sailing ship, to original specifications because he wants to, whether he's building a clock when he's under the influence of some alien psyche, he's building alliances, he's building starships. He designed the Defiant, right? He was on that team. He's a guy who likes to build things. He's not an explorer at heart. He's a builder. So, you got to take points from him. I did on this one anyway, because this question was not, are you good at building things? It's, are you an explorer? And he within this show, he's not.
Nope.
No.
Pike scored pretty high. Pike's he likes to explore and get out and check things out too, and I'm sure we'll see more of that. He's not as high as Picard or Archer is, but he's up there. So, yeah. Okay. Now the last category that we had that is
second to last,
based on what we've seen in the show. That's not a personal bias one. It was their charisma, the charisma and presence. Do they have captain energy? Can they hold a room? Are they the kind of person that you want to follow? Right. So this one, for me anyway, I think had a range of like really high scores and then a few really low ones. So we'll start, Wes, as always, what do you got?
Yeah, so none of them had the top. None of them. I was just looking at my scores. None of them had the same. It was very varied for me. I scored them I scored a couple of them pretty high because based on what I remember from my own memory and also what I've watched recently. Especially with Enterprise, I think Archer really does have a certain charisma. In my opinion, I really think he does because he asks his crew for advice about what to do, or here's something we could do, so let's go do that, or stuff like that. He generally relies on his crew to make informed decisions about what to do, how to explore, that kind of thing, or do something that help something along, for example, or I don't know what else and stuff like that. And it kind of goes by the wayside when the Xindi War saga starts, because then he's more because the crew is mainly angry. Let's just say that the mood is definitely changed because everyone knows somebody who was killed in that initial attack, and especially with Trip Tucker, for example, grieving the loss of his sister or something like that. The crew is more angry and hurt, and then his charisma changed to be more I'm unilaterally doing this. I'm gonna you mentioned Mike. You mentioned about him going himself to go blow up the super weapon, and stuff like that. He was so intent on doing it himself, and Daniels had to say, hey, you are important to history. You can't do this. So I think Archer has more of a charisma for that reason because he relies on his crew to make his decisions most of the time. Not most of the time. The Xindi War saga is a little bit different because he has to do what's best for his crew, but also do what's best for the people of Earth to save them from destruction. But definitely, he has charisma. Picard does have charisma. Obviously, I think everyone wants to follow old Baldy. Regardless,
What do you say?
Looks up to him.
What do you say?
Yeah. I know. Old Baldy. Yeah. Yeah. So everyone has to follow him. Everyone. I think everyone looks up to him. Eventually. And people admire him. Not his crew admires him. His senior staff do eventually. So and Data tries to emulate him as best he can, especially in his quest to become more human. You know, and then Cisco. I think he has the best charisma because he treats his, like I said, for Kirk, it's the same kind of thing. He treats his crew like his family. He is like I said, he's the space daddy. Cisco is, but then you got like the angry aunts and the weird uncles, and
So this particular category for me, I mean, I'm just going to go right off from the top down. For me, Picard has the greatest presence. I had to give him, you know, an absolute 10 on this one because it's not just for charisma. I mean, he has a commanding presence. Um, again, I think I mentioned at one point that Patrick Stewart could steal your girlfriend and you'd probably like it. And that's the thing is that, the actor's natural charisma and presence translates directly to the character's ability to do it too. Um, I couldn't help but when I was thinking about Archer.
Quantum leap.
He was the lowest, the actual lowest on my scale for this one, because I couldn't get over the fact that all I could think of was him as Sam Beckett going, "Oh boy!"
Well, it's Anson
It's
Mount
like,
hair.
man, come on,
I
like,
added the point.
come on, man, really put your back into it on this one, man. And it just wasn't or natural charisma. I actually gave Pike and his hair higher than that. Um, yeah, Burnham, of course. Uh, for whatever reason, I guess maybe I just don't like the character because it seems like I think overall, I think she scored the bottom of my entire list for everything. But I gave her a little above average because she does have some charisma, but her presence still just doesn't inspire for me. Kirk goes without saying. He's right there with Picard, not quite as high in my book, and that's just because all I could think about with Kirk is that episode of The Simpsons where they introduced the character of Smoochie, or not Smooch, not Smoochie, sorry, Poochie. They bring in
Poochie.
Poochie,
yeah.
Poochie.
and all I can think of is Homer sitting there. He's got his little notebook, and he's like, when he's not around, all the other characters should be asking, well, "Hey, where's Poochie?" Like, "Hey, where's Kirk?" That's kind of how I felt with it. Cisco, even though he was a very effective leader, I just don't feel like that unless he's yelling. I don't really feel like he grabs the room and holds it. I actually gave Janeway and Freeman, uh, not higher. I mean, they were actually 1 point lower, but I gave them higher than I felt that their character really would have gotten in different circumstances. I felt like they held a good, solid point, and to me, that was better than what Sisko did.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right, Patrick.
Yeah, I'm going to seriously disagree with that. Once Sisko shaved his head and got the goatee, he became the charisma machine. He literally got my high score. Let's see here. Who else? And below that, obviously, all three of these would have scored a 7, but Anson Mounthair got Pike an extra point. But Kirk and Burnham, I ranked evenly. Writing did her really no favors, but her empathy, her presence, she really brings it together. And the thing about the actor translating into the character, Kirk gets as high as he is because obviously he was the character. I'm not even going to go into what joke I came up with for Kirk's charisma. But yeah, he probably might have scored higher if I didn't think the actor his appeal was somewhere between meh and chicken taco, personally. Archer was a dork. I mean, and we're going to have to say it, probably the most boring character on this list from a Riz perspective. And yes, I am going to use that word. I actually put Picard below average on this one because Picard is not charismatic. I mean, he's also kind of the nerd dude. I mean, there's a reason they brought Riker in. The reason Riker was added as a character to the show was to make up for the fact that Picard just was not that Picard, the character, was not that charismatic. And mind you, Sir Pat, oh yeah, but no, Picard is kind of the diplomat dude. Janeway, mid. Freeman actually hit the very bottom because she gives off cool mom vibes. And unfortunately, as a consequence of her writing, her daughter owns her constantly.
Yeah.
I mean, where else would you learn sarcastic Vulcan salutes?
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, that's fair. I think for me, we are all over the map with this one, aren't we?
Oh yeah.
Kirk, to me, personal charisma is like, that's his shtick, right? He's magnetic, he's charming, he's a ladies' man. He gets a high score on this because it's just his thing. People just like to be around him. Actually scored Archer pretty high on this for kind of the same reason. He's not so much as a ladies' man, but within his crew, and that's how I'm kind of rating this, they like him. And, he is able to control them. He can make them snap their heels when he wants to, but he'll have them to come and have, food with him in the captain's mess. He'll watch, what does he watch? Water polo.
Water polo?
He's kind of like, when he's on duty, he's one way, but when he's off, he knows how to turn on the guy next door thing. The kind of guy you just want to hang out and have a beer and watch a game with. So he gets pretty good on that. Pike is Space Daddy. It's like everybody likes him. He's cool. He's calm. He can joke around and have fun, but he's also knows how to get the job done. Sisko, again, also very high. I just gave him a 9. Because he's literal Space Daddy. He's like the best dad on television for the 90s. And he has, where he might lack in charisma a little bit, he makes up for it with he's got presence to spare. And in the show, even Worf is intimidated by him. He's really good. Picard, I gave an 8. I know a lot of people love him and talk about his, he's got this great personality, but I'm like, does he really? I don't think that he does. He gets better. I will say that. And he gets points because he has command presence. But as charisma goes, he's, he's about as likable as a shit flavored lollipop. He he yells, he's boring, he doesn't know how to have a good time. I mean, they have to make him go on vacation, and even then, what does he do? He sits on a bench and reads a damn book. I'm like, come
On
on, man.
Ryza. And he
Yeah,
has a Horgon
exactly.
and he turns it down. Yeesh.
Yeah. He's like, oh, no, thanks. He's considering read books. And I remember there's like one particular thing. It was the one with the kid who didn't get to go to Starfleet Academy because Wesley was going and he was pissed off and he stole a shuttle. And Picard talked him into how he could, save himself by skipping off a planet or whatever. And Picard the kid thanks him. He says, thank you. He says, I was doing my job, young man. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. He said, thank you. Could you not just say, hey, you're welcome? No, you had to, like, I was doing my job. Don't thank me. So he doesn't he doesn't get the charisma as much as he does get a lot of presence. I think Janeway has a little bit of space mom to her, but not as high as the others. She's kind of like mid to high. And Freeman also a little mid to high, 1 point less than Janeway, largely because we don't get to see much of what she does. She does have some warmth, I think. Her character comes across as having some personal warmth, but we just got to see a whole lot of it, so it's hard to judge. Burnham, bottom of the bucket, she's a 5. Yes, she has some empathy, but is she likable to me? Is she this sort of person that I think could control, hold the room or a bridge? No, not particularly well, not compared to these other characters. No, so she got a dead 5 with me. Okay, so that brings us to the last category, and this is the wild card category. It's personal bias. This is one where we're actually allowed to just say what we like ourselves, not what happened within the universe of the shows. So it's what makes this captain feel special for you, for us personally. So this is, are they likable? Are they unique? Are they fun? So this one, we're again going to be all over the place. So we'll start with Wes. What do you got?
All right. Yeah. So, personally, Benjamin Sisko is my favorite one
Mm-hmm.
because, and I will say this personally, I think he is the most human Starfleet captain of all the shows. Because, and I say this not just because the other shows are great in their own right. The other captains are great in their own rights, but I personally like Benjamin Sisko the most because he is the best embodiment of African American fatherhood of the 90s. I mean, because you had African American fathers on television in the 90s. He has the best one, first of all, because he's probably the second.
Uncle
He's
Phil
probably,
is a close second.
yeah, Uncle Phil from it
Uncle
would be a
Phil's
close
a
second.
close second.
Yeah, you had Uncle Phil. You had was one from Family Matters and stuff like that. You had other ones too,
Carl.
but definitely Carl, yeah, Carl from Family Matters. But definitely Benjamin Sisko does have the best African American dad fatherhood of the 90s because in the 80s you had I'm going to say this Cliff Huxtable from the Cosby Show.
Yeah, that didn't work out too well.
No, it didn't. But that's all I'm going to say. Yeah, but he was a good. I mean, the character was a good father. But that's what I'm going to say about that. You got Benjamin Sisko, you got Uncle Phil from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but Benjamin Sisko definitely is the best one. And I'm going to say because he's the most human Starfleet captain is because before Deep Space Nine, this is why I say Deep Space Nine is the best Star Trek show, bar none, is because these characters, all characters, deal with the consequences of their actions. Like, it's not necessarily just Sisko who makes a decision and it's followed up on episodes later, but it's also characters like Worf, for example. Worf, who, like, for example, decides to side with the Federation in the Klingon Empire's invasion of Cardassia, and is excommunicated from the Empire as a result, as a consequence of that action. Whereas in, say, the Next Generation and the original series, and I mean the films, the original series films kind of do this themselves, but they go to a planet, or go to a starbase, they go to some planet to mediate a dispute or something like that, or explore the planet. They're done in 45 minutes, and it's never followed up again. And in Deep Space Nine, it's they say they do one thing and it's followed up, say, in episode 1, and then it follows up in episode 25, or something like that, and that's why I think these are the most human Starfleet alien characters that probably we'll ever see on Star Trek. Because of that reason, I think that's why I personally feel that Benjamin Sisko is my favorite Starfleet captain, because he, like I said before, he treats his crew like his family. He invites them to dinner. He makes dinner for them. He kind of like Pike does, but definitely he cooks for his crew. He treats his crew like his family. We got the crazy uncle. We got the angry uncle who is Odo. You got the crazy uncle who is Quark. You got is it a horny cousin in Bashir? You got some crazy aunt in Kira, and you got some general.
What makes you think that Picard scored highest on my list? He did not, actually. I will say he did score.
Yeah, chemistry matters.
In the highest, but he actually scored the same as two other captains. So I'm going to give you my highest three, and then I'll kind of group the others together, because there was basically three groups here. There was the highest, the second highest, and then there was Burnham. Kidding, completely kidding. I rated Archer, Pike, and Picard the highest. And I did this because for me, and they each had their own reason, but it's largely because one, Archer was very much the embodiment of the explorer. I felt like I could have watched several more him grow. And the it's just a matter of we didn't know where he was going to go, and I think that they started to grow him in ways I was wanting to see more. So I really felt like they're starting to finally utilize the character for his strength. The next we had was Pike, and that's because again we haven't had the real opportunity to see this character grow, and so far in 2 seasons they have done a phenomenal job of showing us what's behind the wizard's curtain with this guy. This guy, we know he knows his fate, and yet he's still doing it. All right, man, let's go, man. Let's shove it in high gear and rock with it. And then of course, there's Picard, because Picard. I think for me, the first Star Trek series that I ever watched like all the way through was Next Generation, and it didn't bother me that season 1 and 2 were written terribly. I was still invested in the characters, and that says a whole lot. If you can get past the bad writing and still invest in the characters, to me it says something about the actors and their portrayal. For so for the I kind of put Sisko on his own, because I felt like he was more of a good character than the group that I came up with. So I gave him a 7, and a lot of it comes down to is because again he did have to wrangle everything. He did have a lot of layers to him. He wasn't just 2-dimensional. He was kind of that, hey, don't know what he's going to do. So I felt that was pretty unique. That anyway, if you want to call it out straight, the X factor for him. I grouped Burnham and Kirk together because, quite frankly, I just didn't like them as much. I do like Kirk, but all right. But I also put Janeway in there as well. I mean, come on. The thing I like Janeway the most for is her hair. Like, I mean, like she's got like if the ship could be without superstructure, and if she was still sitting there, her hair would keep the ship alive.
But it's not as good as Anson Mount hair. You know that.
Well, that's because it's
Nothing is.
But I mean, seriously,
She used a whole can of Aquanet on her hair. That's why.
oh yeah, I mean, seriously, Aquanet probably made buku money off of Voyager.
She shoved the can into the hair.
Yep, and it just stayed there. And of course, the bottom for me was Freeman, and it's just because again they really didn't use her in a way that would have really made me feel special. She was special. She was, for the lack of a better phrase, with aside from a couple of exceptions, she was a comedic foil for Mariner.
Yeah. Patrick?
Well, I'm just going to go down the line. That's probably the easiest. Archer did lower than average for me. I just never really engaged with the character much. He was kind of the schlub captain. Scott Bakula, obviously solid. I couldn't give him too low, but yeah, I never really enjoyed that character. Obviously, Pike, I'm enjoying the hell out of. Cool character. 1 point, of course, for the hair. You knew that. Also, Anson Mount, thankfully, gave us a reason to forget that one episode with Jeffrey Hunter. So we can pretty much erase that from our memories, even though we literally talked about it on a prior episode. Yeah. Burnham. This is where, I think this is my lowest score for her. No, actually, no. I'm sorry. Cool Under Pressure was where she did worse. But yeah, I gave her a 3 because let's put it this way. Sonequa Martin Green did the best she could, and I enjoyed her, the character, watching her. But as a captain, it was Mary. It was just Mary Sue. Michael Burnham, savior of the galaxy. Ugh.
Seriously, I go back to what I said before. They gave her a shit sandwich.
Yeah, it was terror. Yeah, that's what got her had. We get to Kirk 5 because Shatner. Enough said. I couldn't give it a 1 just because I despise Shatner because it's Kirk. I mean, this is a character that does not deserve that. Obviously, we get to Picard. Picard, like Lars, the first series. My first series that I engaged with Star Trek was not the original series. It was TNG. I even liked Wesley Crusher. But Sir Pat is awesome, so I gave him a high rank. Not the 10. That goes, of course, to Sisko. Because I rewatched DS9, and after rewatching that, it is just... Sisko has the best arc. Avery Brooks is solid. As he from episode 1, he is a good, fleshed-out character and just gets better as he goes. Compare that with Picard, who was, well, shall we even talk about season 1? Yeah. Okay. Janeway, completely mid. I'm trying to get through a rewatch of Voyager, and I'm stalled out. I'll get back to it eventually. Kate Mulgrew, credit for what she did. She pioneered it, and she was solid. I actually gave Freeman an 8. Why? Because the character produced Mariner, but did vocal jazz. Ugh. But I think we needed so much more Dawn Lewis. She was so good for what she was, for her assignment. Freeman gets on screen. It is fun to watch every time. Even if the character unfortunately gets to be a secondary character when she is doing what she does. It is great.
That's fair.
Of course, that's Lower Decks bias because I just love that show to death. I'm not having a problem rewatching that.
Well, for me, I'll just go down the line. Just I think that's the most effective way to do it too. Archer, I gave it 8. I actually really like him. He's not my favorite, but I like him. I like, but he again, like I talked about earlier, he kind of has that normal guy vibe. He has a dog,
Sure.
that he loves his dog, and he's an explorer. He's an engineer. He has friends, and like he has people to dinner, and he tries so hard to just be, a normal guy when he's off duty. I like his relationships with his crew. I like his relationship with Shran. A lot of that is credit to, oh God, senior moment. Who's the actor?
Oh,
Shran.
oh,
come
Yeah,
on. I
to the
know who
extent-
it is.
Exactly.
I know the character. Ah!
Yeah.
Why
But-
can I?
They had
Okay.
such good chemistry together. So I just liked him. Yeah, I liked the character. I really did. Pike, I gave a pretty good score too. I like him so far. I did ding him a little bit because
Jeffrey
Jeffrey Hunter. Oh, Jeffrey
Yeah, I was
Combs. Yes,
almost
Jeffrey
there.
Combs. Jeffrey Combs. Yes.
There.
I'm sorry, Jeffrey.
legendary
If there's the miracle chance you happen to listen to this, we're very sorry we forgot your name.
We all blanked.
Picard, Pike loses little points because I do have to throw in Jeffrey Hunter, who was Captain Boring. So he loses a little bit of points there because I do have to kind of roll them together. Burnham, I gave it 2. I hate that show and I don't like the character. I just don't. She is, to Patrick's point, she's the Mary Sue. She's the girl boss. It's like she's what? Sarek's kid. Where did this come from? Why have we never heard of this before? Oh well, we have to make her cool. She has to be, she has to be raised.
She's Michael Burnham. Love her.
Yeah, I was like, oh God, it just annoys me. Now I like the actress. She was great in Walking Dead, right? She's a good actress, and I think she did the best she could with what she got. But as a character, did not like her at all. Kirk, I gave a high score to, not my highest, but second highest. He is, I'm older than you guys. This was the show that I started with. He was they were the first series that I watched. I watched, Captain Kirk in the live action, and I even watched the animated series when I was a kid. And other people, we were kids, a lot of other guys, their heroes are sports figures. Captain Kirk was like my hero as a kid. It's like, this is the guy that I want to be. So he gets, big points for that. Picard, I gave a 6. He does get better later in the show, but it's really hard for me. I look at this guy and I'm kind of like, what I want to serve with you? Nah, I don't think so. He's okay, but I like Patrick Stewart, and that weighs a lot into the points. But as far as the Picard character goes, nah, not a favorite at all. Sisko got my 10 for all the same reasons, that Wes and Patrick talked about. He's Space Dad. He's really good at that role, with Jake. He has, in a lot of ways, like Archer, he has very human elements to him. He cooks. He's a chef. He's a musician. He loves baseball and invites his staff to come and see ball games with him. He has his hobbies. He's been married and suffered a lot from losing his wife, but then finds a new one in Cassidy. He is just a likable guy that I look at. Like, I would feel comfortable serving with this guy. I really would. And not just serving with him. I'd be like, if he asked me to go see a ball game, I'm like, hell yes, let's go. Janeway, middle. Not like or dislike. I know this is not a good reason to judge her this way, but every time I hear her voice, I want to tear my ears out because all I hear is Mrs. Columbo.
Oh.
Oh God. I remember it was going to be Genevieve Bujold. She was going to play the role, and then she did. I think she filmed a pilot and just said, "Nah, don't want to do this." I'm like,
Few days of filming.
Yeah, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah,
what?
a day and a half in filming the pilot. Day and a half.
Like, God, what could have been? but she's not terrible. She's just not my favorite. Freeman, I scored low only because you see so little of her. I would love to have seen more episodes where it focused on the senior staff, where she got to do more because the actress does a great job with the voice. But it's just hard to give her a lot of points because there's just not much there, as my old boss used to say. Okay, so we are at that point, right? So, I pulled in all the scores. I had added all these things up. So let's go through and do the countdown. Number 8. Here we go.
Shocker.
Surprise. Yeah, based on everything you've heard over the past hour and a half, 2 hours, you had to know Burnham was going to come in last place.
And you use your criminal picture and everything.
Yes, I did. Her score was 211. She was absolutely the lowest scored of all of us. She got the lowest score. Highest was Wes, gave her 61. Lars actually gave her the lowest at 46. All right. Next up, Carol Freeman. And again, I don't think that anybody here dislikes her. It's just hard to rate her on some of these categories.
Yeah.
Based on what we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
She came in at 219 points, so she scored more, just a few points higher than Michael Burnham did. Wes scored her the lowest. Surprisingly, I scored her the highest at 64 points. Wes gave her 47.
47.
Yeah. You actually scored her significantly lower than you did anyone else, including
Burnham.
Yeah.
I inflated my score so that she would be 1 point above 1 point above Burnham, because I didn't want her to be equal to Burnham.
Oh, there's your personal bias, X factor.
Oh yeah, that's why
got to be better than Burnham. All right, next up, Jonathan Archer. He scored 280 points, so it's a big jump from him, from Burnham and Freeman. I think everybody talked about why he's because he is, as Patrick says, he's kind of the schlub captain, and he doesn't get to do a lot, or didn't get a lot of the cool points the others did because he's never been trained, so his character suffered from some of that. Lowest points on that was Patrick with 55.
Yeah.
Wes was the highest at 81. Okay, and number 6? No, number 5.
The murderer.
Yeah, there she is. Captain Janeway.
She's plotting somebody's death in this picture, I'm sure. Probably Tuvix.
Probably us.
She has that sociopath look. She's kind of like Buffalo Bill with better hair.
I love that.
So
I love that description. I love that description.
She was rough. She scored 290 points, so just 10 points actually more than Archer did. Lowest score there was Patrick at 64. Highest was, again, Wes gave her 80 points. Okay, next up, Captain Pike. Pike actually, he scored 9 points more than Janeway. They were very close. He got a 299. Wes gave him a third time in a row. Wes gave him the highest. Lowest actually was Lars, gave him 70 points. But he was very tight. His score ranged from 70 to 80 between the four of us. So it was pretty good agreement on that. Not a bad score, but just not as high as the next group that we're getting ready to get to. So next up, Captain Kirk. He scored the first character to break into 300 points. So he has 318 points. Lowest score there is actually Patrick with 67.
Shocker.
Yeah. The highest was me with 91. Honestly surprised that he did not score higher than he did. But he still made, he made our top 3. So I can't really complain too much.
He is Kirk.
He is Kirk. All right, next up, Captain Sisko. Sisko
should be number 1.
He was very close. He scored 329 points.
Ooh.
Highest score, actually, Patrick with, or the highest score was me with 87. Lars and Wes tied on that one with 79 points each. And this is the captain who had the most agreement on the scores. So when I calculate standard deviation, which is kind of the average of the variance between the scores, his was a 3.9. So very low on a 10-point scale. That's low. So we had a lot of strong agreement on this character being really good.
But he should be the
329
best.
points. It should be the best. 329 points. And that takes us then to, of course, first place, Captain Picard.
Oh.
He outscores Sisko by 20 points. He is both Lars and Wes's highest score. And over 90 points for the two of you. Patrick scored him the lowest, 82.
Yeah, that's
his
2 points below Sisko, who was my highest score.
Yes. So he's got 349, so 20 points more than Sisko did. Pretty good agreement there. Again, standard deviation of 4.6. Biggest, the one where we agreed the least is actually Archer. Again, 10-point scale, and his standard deviation is 11.6. That means that the standard deviation is actually greater than the scale is. That means there's massive amounts of disagreement there. And there was for this character. So here's our final scores, right? You can see where we came up with. This took a lot of work for everybody to do. But here's our question for you as viewers. What do you think? Debate's over. We answered the question. This is all done. It's definitive now.
And it was wrong.
But did we get it right?
No.
Did we miss anything? Was somebody unfairly judged? Let us know in your comments. But thank you for joining us here on Treknicity, where we do the deep dive on all things Star Trek in the Star Trek multiverse. Again, I am your host, Mike Raper. With me are my co-hosts, Lars DeSenza, Patrick Murray, and our very special guest host, Wes Huntington. And Wes, if you want to tell us about your social.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we try to do episodes every Friday on every podcast feed you can think of. We're audio only. So you can find us on every podcast platform you can think of.
I'm booing you for audio only, man. I want to see your mug on the screen. Come on, man.
I prefer audio, so that's what I did. And my most recent episode was actually my long-awaited Piotr Michael interview I did last summer. Because we had the Star Trek Resurgence. He did voice Ambassador Spock, so he did that. That's the most recent episode because the SAG after video game strike is over. So I dropped that on last Friday. So on the various social platforms, you can find us on Facebook, Blue Sky, and Instagram.
Awesome. Well, be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Treknicity.com, as well as visiting all of our socials listed here. And you can find us on your favorite podcast service, Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and even Amazon Music. Now, if you have any ideas for future episodes, please drop a comment in this video or DM us on any of our social media accounts. Guys, anything left to say before we wrap up?
Thank you.
No.
Well, Wes, it was great to have you on. Have
Yes.
to do it again. Have to do it
again.
again.
It was nice to see you for the first time.
Again.
First time. Yeah. Again. Yes.
And forever.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it was great to have everybody here. So, as always, rock out with your Spock out. Until next time.
I'm the uninfected guy.